We're coming to you live from East London ICC, Eastern Cape, Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality. Today, it is the Provincial taxi called by the Department of Transport here in the Eastern Cape, led by MEC Weziwe Tikana Qotiwe. They will be discussing, or rather they are discussing 4 topical issues around the taxi industry. That is the leadership and unity, regulation of the taxi industry in its own, as well as customer care and professionalization of the taxi industry. We are expecting a keynote address from the Deputy Minister of Transport, Ms. Dikeledi Magadzi, to give a keynote address, and of course they will be breaking our way into commissions wherein they will be discussing these topics, and afterwards they will come back to plenary and give feedback to something that will be showing a way forward to the taxi industry. And remember, this is part of the national taxi lekgotla that is coming up towards the end of this month, as it was launched by the National Minister of Transport, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. We are live on various platforms of choice, on Keith Ngesi Radio Facebook page, on Department of Transport Eastern Cape Facebook page, as well as Stage Elements YouTube channel. Indeed, to this special broadcast. We're coming to you live from East London ICC in Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality. It is a big day today. The Provincial Taxi Lekgotla that is led by the Department of Transport here in the Eastern Cape. My name is Keith Ngesi, and with me I do have Mrs. Kuselwa Yonto Ranki. She is a head of communications with Department of Transport, just to tell us briefly about the main objective of this Provincial lekgotla. Welcome, Mrs. Ranki.
Good morning, Keith, and thank you for having me.
Yes, this looks like a first of its kind, and we do understand that October is earmarked for a transport month. Can you tell us what is the main objective of this Provincial lekgotla?
So the main objective of the lekgotla is to bring together the taxi industry as well as civil society and those that have an interest in the transportation of people, especially through the taxi industry, where we are in a process of deliberating on a number of issues that will take us to the National Taxi Lekgotla. It's one of the ways, Keith, where government is trying to work with industry in terms of improving the service, which is critical, that is being provided by the taxi industry. You would understand that in South Africa, the biggest or one of the largest movers of people is the taxi industry. We've got millions and millions of people that on a daily basis depends on the taxi industry to be able to move from their homes and to work or to access any social or economic opportunities. So this is an engagement of that nature where we'll be focusing in the main on issues that have to do with the taxi industry.
I want to believe that all the stakeholders are here, including taxi associations.
Yes, they are. We've been working with Santaco in the province, Santaco Eastern Cape. They have brought in their various associations, your border alliances here. Uncedo is here with Eastern Cape Taxi Association, as well as the smaller local associations that bring or that form the border alliance and the regional association. So we've got the full complement, and we've also have some special stakeholders that have joined us, like your disability sector, because they've got an interest in terms of how the taxi industry operates. So we have a full complement, and we're happy with everyone who has joined us today.
Okay, let's look at the broader Eastern Cape.
Yes.
I understand that you have mentioned the stakeholders that are here, all the taxi associations. Have you taken them from all regions, that is the districts and the metros across the province?
Yes, we've taken them from all the districts. Keith, all districts are represented in terms of their associations.
Okay.
So we are confident that we have everyone who must be in this discussion here today. But in addition to that, Keith, anyone who has an interest in terms of making their inputs or making their voice heard in terms of the engagements that we are having, they can also visit the National Department of Transport's website, where they will be able to read the discussion documents that will be tabled here, and also be able to make their inputs via email to the department, and those will be then consolidated to make inputs to the National Taxi Lekgotla.
All right, can you briefly just tell us just a teaser on which topics that they will be focusing on?
Okay, so I've said that the main objective is to improve the industry. So one of the areas, or some of the areas that have been identified, include issues of industry regulations, wherein we'll be talking about the whole issue of giving or getting operating licenses and how industry must work with government in terms of that space. And we'll also be talking about issues of empowerment, where we look at how government can better empower the industry, issues of professionalization and customer care, where we'll be talking about, in the main, the professionalization of the industry, looking at how they can formulate businesses that can be able to sustain themselves, and also looking at how the industry can have a value chain that would be providing services to themselves, issues of fueling, issues of maintenance of their vehicles. So there are all sorts of options that government is coming up with to where we want to engage the industry on. And also issues of unity and leadership. You would understand that this is one of the sectors where on a daily basis, or often than not, we find that there's some form of violence and some form of disagreements within the sector. So those are some of the things that we'll be engaging on inside the hall.
All right, I'm sure, Kusi, we will get back to you as we proceed with the broadcast. I understand now that the MEC is approaching the stage. We'll cross over and then we'll come back. Just stay tuned on all the platforms, the Eastern Cape Department of Transport Facebook page, as well as the Stage Elements YouTube channel, as well as keithngesiradio.com, those who wish to listen to radio. Let's cross over.
President, associations zonke in the province, all invited guests, the senior management of the Department of Transport leading in this program. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The next couple of hours that we are going to spend together here are going to be key. They are going to be fundamental to us individually, and they are going to be significant for the taxi industry in general. The time we are going to spend here is going to be vital to the transformation agenda of the taxi industry. It is going to be very crucial to any attempt to affirm the taxi industry as a vital player in the South African economic development drive. The time we're going to spend here is going to be an important contributor as we venture into the reimagining a taxi of the future, a professionally non-industry, an industry that is customer care orientated. And all these, among many, will go a long way in making the taxi industry not just a public transport of desperation and no alternative for our people, but a public transport of choice and convenience. Therefore, my humble plea to each one of you, let us give the gathering the respect and dignity that it deserves. Let us have an open and frank engagement. Let us be robust if needs be, but in doing all that, let us be well-mannered, let us be considerate. But crucially, let us not turn this into another talk shop with no action and no implementation thereafter. Government goal is towards a safer transport system. We are driving towards an improved commuter experience through provision of a safe, reliable, accessible, and efficient transport system. We need our operators to get on board. This is aimed at creating a platform for industry players, interested parties, and government to engage openly on issues affecting the taxi industry. This forms part of the recommendations of the National Taxi Indaba Task Team to achieve formalization, effectiveness, regulations, and sustainable empowerment. Ngamafutshane sikhangela amaqhinga azakulungela wonke umuntu ukuphucula inkonzo zothitho noshishino lweteksi kweli phondo nakwilizwe lonke ukuze sihlonitshwe ngecandelo esilidlalayo nendima enkulu ekuphakamiseni uqoqosho loMzantsi Afrika. All at the crux of our discussion, there will be 4 areas of discussions: unity and leadership, taxi industry regulations, taxi industry empowerment model, taxi industry professionalization and customer care. On the question of unity and leadership, sicela nje sixoxe indlela zomanyano kuba yingxaki enkulu kumaxesha amaninzi esijongene nawo kwindawo esihlala kuzo. Silala kumnandi, sivuke kukubi, sefuneke sidibene kakubi estratweni. Sicela nje into kokuba sixoxe indawo esindlela esinomanyana ngayo, irrespective of our taxi associations, because we know that we belong to different taxi associations. If we go down there, masinga identifywa ngolo hlobo. Let us be identified as transporters of choice to any commuter or to any citizen in the province. Ukwenzela into kokuba abantu pha basihloniphe. Singafumani challenge uba hayi namhlanje silwa ngerank, namhlanje silwa ngeroute, namhlanje silwa ngonoventure nonotaxi. Those are the issues ekufuneka si-engageane ngazo sizokwazi udlula kuzo zibe history kuthi in the province and also nationally ingabizo zinto esizithethayo. There's an issue here, gender-based violence. We can undermine that, but people who are using our taxis are being abused. That's a fact. Ubumama ngokugqibela ukhwele emotweni abakhona amabala akhoyo. Ayingomabala amakhulu ke chairperson ungandijamela afuna side si-engageane kuba umuntu xa ehambe nomuntu engathandi uziyele emapoliseni. Akaripoti mntwini niske nibone ngodrayiva engavuki elandelwa ngamapolisa. Angabisayixela ingxelo uba hayi ndihambe nonenekazi singavumelananga ukuba masihambe sayolala lakwazi ubuya. Others are underage because ngabantwana abancinci o-14 years no-13 years abaye kuhanjwe nabo, abanye bangabuyi bathethe emva kwexesha elide. That's funeke siyiphelise laa nto if we want to be respected by our communities. Ii-challenges esibanazo zisenza ngamaxesha amaninzi sifike emakhaya sixabana namakhosikazi, sixabana nama-girlfriend. Ndiyaqonda mosiba imali xa ingangenanga kubi mnandi, ube nomsindo omkhulu owenza kungabi mnandi apha ekhaya. That's part of gender-based violence because ufike ukhuphela umsindo kumuntu ongumama. I'll be referring to umuntu ongumama because the industry is dominated by men. So ningathi ndithethelela abantu abangomama nalapha endlini, if we can look, we are less than 5% of females who are in the operations of taxi industry. So xa ungumntu onomsindo ungutata uyazi into yoba hey andinayo installment ubhatala imoto, andizukwazi ubhatala indlu, uba nomsindo omkhulu uba ngacelwa le into ubone ubungasuthi ufake impama xa uphuma pha ubuye uqonde ubuya seyixolile. Kanti laa nto uhlukumeza lo mntu uhlala naye. Those are the issues we have to engage on, zingenzeki kwiindawo esihlala kuzo, because ixesha elininzi even our taxis are utilized by female people. Abambala amadoda eteksini because wona ayazi hike, ayakwazi ukuzihambela. But abantu abangomama ngabona abakhwela iitaxi zethu, funeke sibahloniphe. The taxi industry remains so male dominated that it is unfriendly to females, especially those working at the coalface, working as operators. Yet a huge number of taxi commuters are females. How many of you seated here are owners who are having female operators? Mama Peach, njengosihlalo unayo udriver omnye ongumama? Bangapha bakho? Zingaphi itaxi zakho? Yabona uba una-2 kwi-10. Yeyiphi lo percentage? Kwi-10 yezinto anazo babini qha oomama. Tatishumayeli? 20%, sithetha u-50%. Tatishumayeli, bangapho driver nabo? Bangapho mama? Okay. President Gale? Hayi mongameli. Upresident uyandiqhatha. Zingaphi ba uGale? Yabona mos uyandirobha upresident, linanana ngoomama bodwa. Niyayibona le nto, President Mpande? Zingaphi zizonke? Yayibona uba ngamadododwa. But kwi-reality, how many females ezisustain amakhaya? Otata iphela ingekayi ungena kwasegeyithini kokwabo. Uthi awupeya angagodusi naloo teksi. Ingagoduki iteksi xa sepeyile, uhamba ukhangela iteksi yakho awuyazi biphi. But ungumntu ongumama xa epeyile soze angagoduki. Because ucinga ngefamily. When we talk transformation, we have to address those issues and capacitate women to be drivers. Ukwenzela uba si-attract more people to utilize our taxis as a mode of transport. E-compliance with the country tax and labor laws, which includes implementation of Minister of Labor and Employment sectoral determination for the taxi industry, which is already on place, standardizing establishment of leadership processes and participation are other things we need to focus on. On taxi industry regulations, we understand that kwi-challenges esinazo, lento ye operator license, which includes challenges of non-responsiveness of municipalities to applications, resulting in municipalities not responding or not assisting us. Sibone sinezingxaki ze-over flooding ye-taxi rank, over flooding of routes, iyingxaki esinayo ekufuneke si-engagile ngayo. I-operationalization of the National Public Transport Regulator that is able to exercise its full mandate, which includes adjudicating over fare increases across public transport modes. Erratic fare increases have been at the heart of many fallouts between operators and commuters. Uchairperson ngangayingqina le nto ngeli xesha le-COVID, heyi aniwanyusanga mana amaxabiso kuripotwa oko uba hayi iruthi ngoku ayisanyusi nangala 5 rand ivele yathi 40 rand 50 rand ithi bhataza nala maxesha bekungakhwelwa kuwo, but to normalize that ukunyusa ku-right, but unyuse ngendlela efanelekileyo, not informed, kube uniform. Ungafiki ukusuka phi emdantsane xa kunyuka kuzawuba ngaphezu kowuyeqonce. Just a fair increase. Those are the issues which have to look on. Industry empowerment. The taxi industry continues to operate as an informal sector on fringes of formal economy. That is something that we need to change. That's one of the areas ekufuneka sizijongile. Professionalism and customer care. Abantu abaninzi mos eziteksini bamkiswa indlela uthetha. Laa ndlela sithetha ngayo umntu athi andisakhweli kwakule teksi. Ne-customer care. Yabona mos kukho imini sihlale ndafowunelwa ngumntu esithi eli xesha bekumane kusithiwa makuvulwe igephu encinci efestireni xa kukhwela abantu abaninzi. The overload singatyhola nangayo. Kuthiwa hayi urhulumente ebesenza sikhwelisa u-50%, but amaxesha amaninzi besizigcwalisa isiteksi, especially ku-local. Nangoku bisengu-70 ntontoni. Wafowunela umama athi, nangu udrayiva akafuni sivule ifestire, akunxitywanga neemaski kule teksi. Udrayiva xa athi drayiva bambelela ndifowunele u-MEC, athi ngu-MEC uthini, ayo moto ka-MEC le, imoto yam le. You understand? Abe umntu elazi ilungelo lakhe xa kuthethwa inyani elo gqitha nelikadrayiva. Because any commuter, if kuthiwa ngoku makunxitywe imaski, angangayikhweli iteksi ufika abantu bengazinxibanga imaski eteksini. Wena uzamfuna ngenkani because you believe uba phakathi kwekomani ne-Lady Frey 50 rand yakho leyana. Abe yena ebona into yoba uzise riskini yokosuleleka ngokungafuni ukhwela. So funeke sikwazi ukukhathalela those customers, sikwazi uba professionals when sithetha nabo. I'm just making an example. But issues of road safety will also be placed under a spotlight. We are heading towards the busy festive season. I need to take my hat off to you colleagues in the taxi industry in that there has been a significant decline in the number of crashes emanating from the taxis recently. Keep up the good work. I also have to point out that taxi drivers, on the other hand, have been pointed as those with disregard of the law and the rights of other road users. That are something that we need to change, colleagues. Niyayazi ke mos laa nto into yoba soloko siyixoxa uba noko driver bayaniphoxa. Abenzi ngoba sithanda. Funeka side sibafake kwesi sikolo sokokuba masiphathe ngendlela eyiyo. Imthatha kiwesi utata uShumayeli uyayazi notata uGeyile uba hayi kunzima pha. Kunzima koodriver, kunzima ezimotweni, but zizinto ekufuneka sincedisene ngayo. Poor customer service and safety of commuters continue to characterize industry operations. The proposed broadening of scope of the industry apex board, Sandaco, must include powers to penalize operators who violate customer care standards to threaten the safety of commuters. I know niyakwazi uyenza le when there are cases reported to you. But we are saying that needs to be formalized. Sibe ne-understanding uba ningena xa kutheni. I know uba sike sathi siyagezeleka noko kula rank si-reporte, you go down and engage your members in that. We have to applaud you on that one. Training of operators and taxi workers across the value chain must be an integral part of the industry development and skilling program intervention by various stakeholders such as TITA, private sector and government must be coordinated so that they are all focused towards developing a professional cadre underpinned by standards that they elevate the industry beyond its current level of professionalism. I know that there will be challenges because there are cooperatives repositioning for upskilling and training, wanting to source the funds for TITA from TITA, but we are saying now, at least those funds need to be accessed by yourselves to train your membership. Akuzuba mnandi ke xa siya apho kulaa mcimbi we-training. Niyayazi mos nani, uba kukho abathi ba-ready, for ukutraina, kukho aba bangekho ready for ukutraina, ba ready for ukuclaima uba bangatraina but singaboni bantu batrainwayo. Ndithetha isiXhosa mos. Kukho aba bamane beclaima ngoba ba ready bathi bayatraina singaboni bantu batrainwayo. Izawuphela mos loo nto HOD. Whoever uthatha imali karhulumente must go iyokwenza le nto ifanele uba yenziwe. If you access mali from TITA or from any entity which its purpose is for training of your members, it must go for training of members, not for any other thing else. Those are the things we have to look at and guide on the processes. As the Department of Transport in the Eastern Cape in particular, we want commuters to choose public transport, especially taxis, as a mode of transport of choice, not as a mode of transport of desperation. Government's goal is towards a safer transport system. We are driving towards an improved commuter experience through the provision of a safe, reliable, accessible, and efficient transport system. We need our operators to get on board. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, inputs from this gathering here will form the basis for any reforms and improvement in terms of the laws as well as plans to be implemented in the near future. Silipondo sawuthatha inxaxheba kwi-National Taxi Lekgotla eza kuba khona xa kuphela inyanga with inputs from this Lekgotla yethu as the province. Endiqinisekileyo ukuba when we go for commissions, we'll be preparing our inputs as the Eastern Cape province. Let me close by reiterating what I had said before. Let us give this gathering the respect and dignity that it deserves. Let us have an open and frank engagement. Let us be robust if needs be, but in doing all that, let us be well-mannered. Let us be considerate. But crucially, let us not turn this into another talk shop with no action and no implementation thereafter. It means we'll support the outcome of National Indaba, and as the department, we are prepared to operationalize and implement the decision of the National Indaba, working with the associations led by Sandako until we are informed otherwise as the Department of Transport in the province. I thank you.
Masimbulele umphathiswa wezothutho apha eMpuma Kapa ngale guidance asinika yona. Ngoku ndizawucela u-Deputy Minister aze ngaphambili. Just to recognize, we now MMC for Roads and Transport from Nelson Mandela, Ms. Rosie Dermines, Mr. Aseza Dlanjwa from Salka, Ms. Yanisa Jakla from Transnet Freight Rail. You are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MEC, for the speech that you have just said. And let me recognize you, Mayor Tikana Gotiwa. I need to also recognize the HOD, Mr. Mafane, the National Task Team led by Mr. Venkile. Let me recognize the leadership of Santako in the Eastern Province, Eastern Cape Province, led by Mayor Mabije, and all the associations which are here today. The bishop that has just opened with a prayer, and all the pastors which are here today, and indicate that I'm bringing revolutionary greetings from Minister Mbalula, who could have been here today, but because there's a cabinet meeting which he could not stay away without attending, I had to come on his behalf. But also to say, MEC, that we are working in a new normal. Probably a lot of people would have had to see my face, but you can't see my face because I have to comply with the new normal regulations. And we're urging you as taxi operators and the captains of the industry that it is compulsory. We should not give COVID legs because it is us who are commuting people from one end to the other. So if we allow our taxi drivers not to wear masks, not to open windows, we're going to be in trouble because it has already been indicated in other countries that the second surge has come. But within the same note, I need to wish speedy recovery, in particular to Dr. Zwelim Kize and the wife, Dr. Mashiko, but to wish speedy recovery to everybody in the Republic of South Africa who has found themselves being infected by the COVID-19 virus. Program Director, it is indeed a great opportunity for me to be here addressing the Eastern Cape Lekgotla with an intention of making sure that this industry becomes an industry of sunrise. The election manifesto of the African National Congress has implored upon us that we need to make sure that we deal with the challenges that are there in the public sector, in the public transport, focusing on the trains, the buses, and in particular, the taxi industry. That is why Minister Mbalula, arriving in this department, saw it fit that he needs to focus on this big industry. Amongst the things that Minister Mbalula has said is that we need to urgently look into what has happened since 1997, when there was a conference in Durban, and Indaba in Durban, which spoke to the issues of the taxi industry. Look as to how far have we progressed and make sure that we take from where our predecessors has been able to reach the situation where they have reached. These improvements which were made before us, we are still demanded by the situation that we need to have a reliable, affordable, accessible, efficient, safe, and integrated public transport systems in which we would be able to render true economic and a social enabler. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the public transport that we are talking to has been one of the issues that the minister had indicated in his 5 priorities. I need to say quickly that amongst other things that we are speaking about is the taxi industry should look at itself and be able to say we need to modernize. And modernization does not mean buying new cars only, but we must look into other developments which actually are currently taking place. The taxi industry should be part of the bus rapid transport as we are speaking. The taxi industry should be able to modernize and make sure that as we're talking about the applications that are there, they become part of those applications. The taxi industry should be able to make sure that eventually you don't have a situation where you're collecting money in cash, but you have a cashless approach, which actually will be able to assist you to look into your business as a business entity, which actually is, then you are able to make an understanding of the average that you will be doing in a month or in a day or in a week. This October month is we call it Transport Month, and the Cabinet of the Republic of South Africa in 2003 declared that October be the Transport Month. This year, our focus is on making sure that we showcase our achievement as part of this celebration. But important is to make sure that we have our makhotlas so that in the end, we will have the National Khotla will be able to give us a directive and a direction as to how we take the taxi industry forward. We know that there has been strategic retreats in most of the provinces. There has been interventions that have been made, and there are consolidation of those strategic retreat as has seen in other provinces. And we believe that at the end of this month, we definitely will be counting very good live chickens. We are mindful of the fact that we could have done this earlier in the year, but because of the pandemic, we ended up doing the makhotlas now. But we believe that it is better late than never in this endeavor that we are trying to deal with. Our intention with these taxi makhotlas is to make sure that we collaborate, we coordinate, but importantly, we deal and become partners as the captains of the industry and government, because government cannot be able to do it alone. And you also will not be able to do it alone. And we must also look at the global trends as to how is the public transport being looked into, how is it being dealt with. Because if we don't, and we find ourselves working in silos, we will not be able to fix the challenges that are there. Our priorities are to make sure that we improve the public transport as an economic and a social enabler in which the centers of commerce, the centers of industry, health, education, leisure, and other social amenities are easily accessed. And MEC, I need to indicate that our minibus industry are focusing on, let me say, kind of myopic approach, because we see less of our people in the tourism industry. And I would urge the industry that look into other avenues, because we're talking about health, we're talking about education. Many of you are not in the scholar transport. When we talk about leisure, many of you are not in the tourism industry. And the focus is just making sure that you commute people from workplaces and all the other areas. But you need to spread your wings so that this industry, as a sunrise industry, can be able to go into other avenues and other avenues. To this end, MEC, I need to indicate that we need to fix the challenges that are in the rail transport, in the bus industry, but importantly, what is it that we are having as a key challenge in the taxi industry? How do we make sure that the taxi industry, because it's a multi-billion rand industry, it grows to and grows and grows. And I'm talking here, maybe question would be, how many cooperatives are here in the Eastern Cape that the taxis can be able to say, When we change our tires, we've got our own cooperative. When we put petrol, we've got our own cooperative. When we do maintenance, there is a cooperative where we can be able to do maintenance. Or, importantly, where do you buy your cars? Because you buy cars every now and then from somebody else. And these are the things that we are imploring on yourself to say. You can't be a 40 billion rand worth of an industry that does not have its own. You're depending on other people to pour petrol, to maintenance, to buy tires, and even to buy the cars. These are the things that you should start looking into, because you can't be an industry that depends on other people but yourself. You must also understand that we are faced with historic challenges in this industry, and therefore we urgently need solutions to the problems that are there. I need to indicate that some of the things that we observe, why there will always be violence and conflict, are oversaturation and oversupply of the taxis in a particular area, which actually diminishes the revenue that goes to the operators. There is also poor infrastructure, which we are trying to deal with. I'm sure when you were listening to the president on Thursday, he indicated that amongst other things that we have to do speedily is to make sure that we do rural, urban, peri-urban road infrastructure development and maintenance. And hence, in all the provinces, with the money that we have been allocated, we're no longer focusing in towns, but we're focusing and making sure that we deal with rural roads, which actually many of your businesses find themselves there. You buy a taxi this year, 2 years down the line, it's no longer a taxi but a coffin, precisely because of the infrastructure, in particular the roads that they are traveling. The unconditional competition on the routes is one other problem that we have seen, which actually I would say it causes violence, and it also causes conflict, because I buy a taxi, I stand by the corner, I create a taxi rank, I create an association, and therefore the other ones who have been using in between that corner where I am, they start to fight with you, and these are the conflicts which really happens from time to time. I need to indicate, ladies and gentlemen, that there has been several researches which have been made, and amongst other things, Schellenkamp and Klopp made in their research indicated that taxi industry and taxi public transport is an agenda which government should focus on in earnest. And they said this as early as 1994 when we came into the new government, and went on to be part of the NTT, where they make several propositions to say this is how we can be able to do that. International Labour Organization has also looked at what is happening with the minibus taxi industry in the Republic of South Africa, and have made several observations in that regard, some of which to date have not been resolved. And it is in this Lekgotla that we should be able to look at some of the issues that have been raised. Professionalization is one other thing that they have revealed in their study. The negative developments that are there with respect to conflict, regulation, which actually is resident in government, but other things that they have identified, which we need to say, how do we regulate the taxi industry? And the NTT has also mentioned the fact that it is important that this industry be subsidized. This is one other thing which the minister is looking at and saying, how do we make sure that we support the minibus industry in a form which actually will be a form that will make your businesses to be viable. But we also, as government, are saying, look as to how you operate as individuals. Only this morning I was phoned by one operator from Gauteng saying, I've been waiting for my operating license. And I am here in Midrand, they are not assisting me. But just imagine if there's 300 of operators that go to one station on a daily basis, instead of a cooperative or an association or a company that goes and look for those things, won't we be able to assist each other, because these are the challenges that we come across as we deal with the taxi industry. The minibus operators should be able to look into how can they partner with government, like I've already indicated that you're not part of, some of you are not part of the bus rapid transport, you are not part of the scholar transport, and how do we make sure that we assist you in this regard? Recapitalization, formalization, regulating the taxi industry, it's but one thing that we should be able to look into as the department. And how do we regulate, formalize, modernize this industry? We need to do it together with yourself so that as your customer grows, they grow with the satisfaction that they will be experiencing. And critical is how do we now go forward and make sure that we actualize the most important things that are there. Your ability to contract with government will go a long way. Your ability to make contracts of multiple contracts and bringing yourself as individual into those contracts are critical. The burden of regulatory control, several hundreds of you coming together and having companies will be able to assist and will pick you up as speedily as possible. The networks or the routes that you are being identified, start to work with SALGA, start to work with the municipalities, so that when the municipalities do their IDPs, you are able to be part of these IDPs and be able to guide the municipalities that this is how we can be able to see the route. They should be able to do transport planning together with yourself to know that here in East London, these are so many taxis that we want. These are the routes that we believe the taxis will be able to travel, and therefore it will ease the tensions that are there to a particular extension. I've spoken just a little bit about the taxi recapitalization, but I need to say this has been a cabinet decision of 2004, which is still going on. And in 2004, it was said that this recapitalization will continue for 7 years. And it is still continuing because there is a need. And government has had said that they're going to be putting 7.7 billion to can be able to recapitalize, meaning that you will bring in your old vehicle and be able to be subsidized in that regard, in making sure that we've got many new vehicles on the road, but scrapping the old vehicle. The question to me every time when we talk about recapitalization is, are you participating in this big business that government has made for you to can be able to scrap your taxis I will not be able to answer that question. But what becomes important is we need to address the fragmentation and the deregularized minibus industry. And I think if we can be able to agree that we need to formalize, to agree that we need to regulate, to agree that we need to look at ourselves as a taxi industry as an economic empowerment program, and therefore look at every other thing that I have already spoken to. Now I'm speaking to recapitalization. Earlier I spoke to filling stations, I spoke to a number of things, how you change your tires, how you maintain your taxis, but you cannot be economically empowered if you don't look at the bigger picture of where do we want to go from here. Because let's look at this industry as a business that can be able to take South Africa by storm. That the Minister Mbalula is saying that he is working towards subsidization of this industry, and therefore we shouldn't undermine those things. But what becomes important is that as we are talking about regulations, let's look at the National Land Transport Act of 2009 as to what are the precarious situations that we need to correct in this act. I can immediately tell you that your deputy chairperson, when earlier we're meeting and greeting, spoke to the question of e-hailing. We need to say, let e-hailing be regularized through legislation, because you are regularized by legislation. The e-hailing is not there, and they are operating within your area of operation. And these are the things that we need to recognize and say, how do we work together? And I can quote so many other things within the legislation that you should be able to read the legislation and say, these are the things that we believe we should look at and make inputs towards having a legislation that can be able to assist you to work towards being a better industry in this regard. As we are moving towards the Indaba, towards the end of this month, I need to indicate to you that indeed the MEC has spoken, and I must also talk to that the operations that you as an industry are doing with respect to safety on the roads cannot go unrecognized, and we need to applaud you for that. That you are having this operation despite the fact that there are still many people who are dying, because one death is one death too many. But we need to applaud you to say your operations are making sure that there is less and less people dying on the road. But as we will be dealing with professionalization, as we will be dealing with customer care, please let's look at just a few things and little things that matter. Because if you stand in the middle of the road, what do you expect of the other people, the other traffic that is commuting? Because you have stand in the middle of the road. You are master of all you survey. Change that behavior. The robots have opened. You have blocked the other traffic because you are still either offloading or people coming in the middle of the robot, in the middle of a busy town. You're doing that. And these are the things that we are saying as you professionalize. Those conduct must be able to be conduct that belongs to the past, because we're here talking about safety. It doesn't become safe when you just decide to stop. Tell your passengers that he mustn't tell you, Kuti, I want to, please offload me here, must tell you in advance so that you can be able to prepare yourself, knowing very well that in 300 meters, in 500 meters, I will be stopping. And many of you, once you are able to do that, indeed, you will be abiding by the rules of the road. Many other things that I don't even need to talk to, that you know better than I do in this industry. Program Director, I need to indicate that this is a competitive business and we should take it as such, but we should be able to build this industry in such a way that even those that will be coming will be able to work towards the building of this industry. It is competitive because we expect you that in future you will have cards, or you will be having tickets which a person can be able to use that ticket to go into a bus, to go into a train, to come into a taxi, and you are able to integrate the public transport industry. It is competitive because you need to look into other avenues and other areas where we believe you can be able to work in such a way that you are able to benefit, because it has not been very easy during the lockdown. You were the only transport industry that remained, and that, together with the safety issues, we need to commend you for that, because it was only the taxi industry which was operating and operating at a loss. Because if you have to, out of 15 people, you are left with 7 people, you are running at a loss through and through. And these are the things that we need to say. When it was not popular from lockdown 5, you stood firm to make sure that you deal with social cohesion. You stood firm to make sure that you deal with economic issues, and you stood firm to make sure that the little remnants of the economy, which is being so butchered, even before the pandemic, our economy was already ailing. You stood firm to say you will continue. And these are the things that we are applauding from the taxi industry, because all the other modes of transport could not operate, but the taxi industry, who actually did not say that we are working and we are not getting any money, but you worked, even though the relief fund has not arrived as yet. You worked through those unpopular times. And I need to say thus to all of you, I wish you the best in this Lekgotla, and believe that your deliberations will be the deliberation which will build this industry to a higher trajectory. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, TM. I think now that we have listened to our leadership, it is time that now we start the work. They've given us guidance in terms of what is expected of us, what we need to do. Ours is to deal with the administration part of it. On that note, I will call Mr. Vengile to come forward to do a presentation on the roadmap. And then we'll take questions and clarities thereafter. Mr. Vengile, please come forward. Mr. Vengile is the chairperson of the National Task Team, that is looking at coordinating all the inputs from various provinces, leading to the national tax lekgotla, which will be held at the end of the month. Over to you, sir.
Can I use this one? I'm not sure if it's afternoon or morning. Good morning, everybody. Deputy Minister, MEC, HOD, MMC. I will try to be as quick as possible, but without leaving the important things out. Ndizawuzama ke nalapha endethweni ukuxuba so that we all accommodated. Njengebetshilo HOD igama lam nguLawrence wakwaVenkile, usihlalo wale task team that's coordinating the National Taxi Lekgotla. My presentation has 4 parts. We'll remember, but as the MEC and the Deputy Minister have said, part of what we want to achieve is to reimagine the future of this industry. In giving context, because this presentation, we refer to it as a scene setting, because it's meant to assist you in terms of teasing out some of the issues that are in the discussion documents and the issues that you should really look at incisively. Ngoba, in as much as we've come a long way since 1995, when the National Taxi Task Team was established by Minister Mek Maharaj, there's a lot of progress that has happened over the years. There's a lot of implementation that has happened. Some of the things did not succeed the way that we would have hoped. But the important thing is to look into the future. As the DM had indicated, we need to reimagine the industry of the future. This slide, it just sets the scene, the context. When we talk about the taxi industry, was saying, we need to look at the totality of this industry. That is today's reality. One of the challenges we're facing in relation to technologies like e-hailing is because we're caught napping. We did not see it coming. As a result, we're still scrambling in terms of how do we regulate? How do we make sure that the metered taxis is not displaced by the technologies? But part of it is also imagining in terms of how do we take advantage of these technologies and even develop our homegrown solutions. Now, these numbers just sets the context to who is who in the taxi industry and the kind of numbers that we have there, so that we can understand the magnitude of this industry and its importance in moving the people. What is it that we're trying to achieve with this lekgotla and consequently the national lekgotla? The most important building block of the national lekgotla is what we are doing here today and the issues that we'll be looking at. The minister has been quite emphatic that the discussions that we must have, they must not be holy cows, which means then we must have an honest and robust engagement on the issues that affect this industry, but also we must find the solutions. And also the Deputy Minister has made this point quite emphatically that the Lekgotla must not be a talk shop, not another talk shop. Siyazi ukuthi nani nidiniwe, kukuthetha kungabikho results. The focus must be action oriented ukuthi yonke lento sizavumelana ngayo, we need to emerge with a roadmap. The National Lekgotla must emerge with a compact of implementable actions. Implementable actions, because we're saying it's been 24 years. The minister does not want another administration to come into office to still talk about the National Taxi Task Team of 1995 that set the blueprint for the industry. We must take to logical conclusion all those issues that emerged at the time. The challenges that we're confronted with, we know that unity remains a challenge in the industry. We continue to have incidents of conflict and violence. You know this better than we do. But we need to get to a point where we find each other and where we are able to eradicate and eliminate conflict and violence in the industry. We need to think differently. There have been things in the past, code of conduct. We know that even in the current legislation, is a code of conduct umphathiswa both kwiPhondo nakuNdlunkulu, but they are empowered by law to prescribe a code of conduct. One of the challenges that we raised with the leadership of Santaco remains contested by the NTA. And I want to put it on record. The minister has engaged the NTA purely on the basis of setting the record straight that when we establish Santaco as a leadership structure of the industry, we were taking to logical conclusion the process that was started by the National Taxi Task Team. Everyone, the freedom of association in this country is entrenched in the Constitution. Anyone can establish themselves into an association. But when we're talking about Santaco, we're talking about a council that must then look after the interests of the industry. But in Alapo, we must have an honest conversation. Are we doing what we wanted to achieve? ZP's pen, where is it that we must correct? How do we improve what we have developed? So there must not be any doubt about who the leadership structure of the industry is. It's Santaco. It's a process that started way back in after the NTT in 1998 with the establishment of Santaco, subsequently Santaco in 2001. The industry continues to operate on the fringes of the economy. There are a number of reasons for that, and also a number of disadvantages why an industry as powerful as this industry that has so much potential to drive the economy is not where it should be at the center of the economy. We're talking about an industry that generates in excess of 40 billion per annum. But who is the real beneficiary even of those billions that you generate? Siyaphinda singurhulumente sithi the regulatory framework remains weak and ineffective. We're the first ones to admit that let us have that honest conversation. Then there are a number of reasons for that. Some of those reasons may be internal reasons within government in terms of how government operates in enforcing the law and regulations, but also some of the issues that the industry itself needs to take ownership in respect of. We need to say, how do we ensure that the regulatory framework, because the regulatory framework is not just about policing you to do the right thing, but it's also about protecting you and your interests. A number of discussion documents have been put out for engagements. You'll notice, documents, right at the beginning, there's a disclaimer. It disclaimer, as the documents, they do not contain any official position, but they are meant to encourage and stimulate discussion and debate on issues you don't have to agree with what is written in the document, but the idea is that masiposes vivaneni, let's all contribute to the battle of ideas and emerge with something that will take this industry forward. The first document relates to industry and leadership. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that the DM had raised in particular. I think she was raising that so that we can take note, and when we discuss in the commissions, we must not lose sight of those issues. The first document relates to unity and leadership. We have had experiences in relation to the evolution of the industry. When we talk about formalization happens at two levels. The first level, on the leadership side of things, we know that when we started after the entry with the standard constitution, was about how do we introduce democratic practice in our associations? How do we elect leadership? How do we look after the rights of members? We even had registrars who were also responsible for assisting associations if kuna conflict, there's a splintering in the association, or there are members that feel that their rights are not being protected. But also formalization happens on the business side of things. That how do we formalize ourselves into business entities? Now remember, business entities is not necessarily limited to a private company. It can be a private company, it can be a public company, it can be a cooperative, it can be a banking cooperative, it can be any number of things, such that we are able to participate fully in the economy. One of the issues that have come up strongly in the discussions about leadership of the industry have been issues and ideas about why is it that perhaps maybe we need to introduce umthetho that will create a statutory body. Maybe this Santaco should be a statutory body establishing umthetho. Isebenza kanjani le nto? Okanye let's look at other alternative models. So part of what is in the documents to assist the thinking process, iyazijonga zonke as levels ukuthi what is possible, what is it that we're trying to achieve. Siyazi ukuthi the NTT final recommendation that was accepted by government, by the minister and MINMEC, it was called MINCOM those days, in 1996, spoke sharply on the issue of leadership. But one of the most important things that the NTT said, you must remember the NTT was a product of comprehensive consultations with industry, with civil society, with government, with 36 public hearings right across the country. That is why to this day, I'm certain that all of you still respect that document as a blueprint for the industry. But it said, when you establish leadership for the industry, it must be leadership right across anything that says taxi. Now we know we have not really achieved that, because every now and again we still have meter taxis, come knocking to say, we need help. Santaco, please, can you talk to us? Government, can you talk to us? About e-hailing, as they emerge as a consequence of technology, not only did they catch regulators off guard, but they also caught the industry off guard. As a result, in terms of how we respond to that, because we asked the question, some of the countries have done that to say, you know what, let's find solutions. These things, you bring technology, we have the expertise, we can create our own technologies. Why is it that we're not doing that? That's one of the issues that is coming out quite strongly. As I was saying, that the number of options that are there is that you could look at a statutory body, but we do the document does say in terms of what are the disadvantages of that, because once it's established by law, it's no longer your structure, it accounts elsewhere, it's a parliamentary structure and all of that. It's no longer a truly industry representative structure. But one of the options is a professional body, is to say Santaco can be a professional body that has certain limited authority over the industry. Just to give you an example of that, one of those things, we know that, for example, the registrar was a custodian of the standard constitution. Where there is a conflict in an association or there's a splintering, the registrar would then come and and mediate and all of that. Is it possible that we could look at those kind of roles to say on leadership issues, on industry and association, you can allow Santaco to play that kind of role. But in playing that kind of role, there are certain things that we need to take into account, but also make decisions on. If Santaco is to be a truly industry representative body, we must remove any element that suggests that the leadership of Santaco may be biased towards one association or the other. But again, you understand these issues better. One of those things, as an example, is that, is it desirable for someone who gets elected into a council body, like a regional council or a national council structure, should they still be able to hold positions in an association, for an example? What are the disadvantages of that? So those are some of the examples. Now, one of the options, if we're saying we do not want legislation, the minister, there's nothing stopping an amendment to legislation to allow the minister power to recognize, such that you eliminate this element of people wanting to contest the authority and the leadership role of a body like Santaco. So these are the issues that are in the document. I'm not going through because I'm sure you've seen the issues, but also there's issues around associations. We know that we've had issues around registration of associations in terms of the Transitional Act. But then some of these things, when we introduced the 2009 legislation, they kind of fell between the cracks. And we believe that the registration of associations gave associations a sense of recognition. And because we had linked registration of associations in the past to operating licenses and economic benefits, it's something that we need to take a hard look at. So there's quite a number of these issues without taking too much time. Industry regulation, the most important part of your operations is your operating license. The operating license gives you access to the business so that you're able to make money and be able to feed your family and be able to do all other things that you're able to do. We've come a long way with operating licenses, going back from the days of permits, from the days of the local road transportation board. We know the history of the industry. The document goes into that in terms of what happens from the 1930s, the Motor Carriages Act, to the 1980s, the Velgemoot Commission that recommended the deregulation of the industry, how the evolution of the permits as an instrument to protect buses emerged, how the minibus taxi industry emerged out of the deregulation, and how the associations themselves, because of the need for some kind of regulation, and government was trying to kill this industry with the deregulation, how the associations became the authority, the de facto self-regulating authority in relation to routes and all of that after the deregulation. That is a hard history where government was hell-bent in oppressing this industry, and how out of those difficult times, how this industry emerged. And on that basis that the minister, and as the DM had said, calls it the sunshine industry with a bright future if we're able to find each other and do these things right. When we look at the regulation, again, it's two sides of the same coin. Regulation means that on one hand, urhulumente must do its part, both in terms of enforcing the law, but also in terms of protecting your interests. Because that operating license is supposed to be issued on the basis of the transport plans. When you have a flooding of the market, you have buses and others, it's in your pocket. You are the ones who become losers. What is wrong with the regulatory system? Starting with the issues that are around permits. Why is it that we have conflicts with other modes? We need to address those issues. Why is it that in 2020, there are some of you who still operate with receipts and have been waiting I'm not sure what's the longest time, maybe for months or a year without that operating license being issued. You yourselves have raised concerns about the role of civil servants in terms of sowing conflict in the industry and bias and doing things that do not assist the industry, but that undermine the industry. You yourselves have raised issues about police officers of the law, who have vested interest in the industry, whose behavior undermines what you want to achieve. Law enforcement is a critical element over and above the issues around the behavior of the police. How is it that we can improve law enforcement? Government is saying perhaps we need to take a step back and look at a model where we can have a uniform approach, a dedicated public transport law enforcement. Let's look at those issues. The MEC spoke about the issues around the National Public Transport Regulator. Niyazi ukuthi ngokomthetho, in terms of the law, inter-provincial operating license must be issued by the National Public Transport Regulator. For the last 11 years, that has not happened since the 2009 Act was passed. The PREs have had the burden, I want to emphasize the additional burden of carrying the load of issuing interoperating licenses, resulting in situations where there is no uniformity in the approach, and in some instances leading to conflict situations. Because a PRE in Gauteng is going to issue an operating license to a bus company that starts in Gauteng that terminates in Ngcobo, as an example. Without taking due regard of whether there is a market there and all the circumstances there. And the reason for that is also partly a failure in the system and also government, where municipalities don't respond when they're supposed to say, hey, any bus up or any taxi from another province here. We need to fix that. It's unacceptable. Now, Minister Mbalula has appointed a new National Public Transport Regulator that accounts with a political oversight by the DM, that has now been given its full mandate to deal with all the aspects in terms of the law, not just tourist services as it was in the past. And will be hard at working with you, because they are not just their role is not just about public transport and operating licenses, but it looks at the totality of public transport. They have to set norms and standards for the PREs. They have to guide the municipalities in terms of how they do their work. And they need to be able to engage with you and understand in terms of how to improve the system. One of the important mandates of the NPTR is that when that PRE is not issuing your operating license within 90 days as required by the law, the PRE is empowered by law to step in there. But also that PRE will address the challenge of municipalities that do not have the capacity to look at the request for concurrence in relation to operating licenses, so that we remove the bottleneck, the bottlenecks that delay the issuing of operating licenses. We've dealt with the issue of registration of associations. It's one of the issues that omnye umcimbi ochisibunzi relates to ranking facilities. Siyazi ukuthi we've been saying all along, right from the NTT, that municipalities have a responsibility for ownership and maintenance and management of ranking facilities. But there is no national framework that guides that process. It's just pieces of the legislation. We've highlighted there the sections of the legislation that deals with this issue. But we know that depending on the capacity of the municipality, you have a different situation. But also because of your pioneering nature as an industry, you establish routes where you see the potential of the market. There's a new establishment that emerges there. You get operations, you get taxes going. By the time the municipality wakes up to realize that there is a need for infrastructure and support here, you already have your ranking facilities on the side of the road because there are no facilities. Now, part of the conversation and part of the task team includes SALGA. We're saying SALGA needs to come to the party. But let's think creatively around this infrastructure. Part of thinking creatively is saying, are municipalities correctly positioned to provide the ownership and the development we require? Are there other ways we can do it? We can do public-private partnerships, perhaps, and do commercial developments around the public transport interchanges? Or should other levels of government, province and national, get involved in owning some of the strategic facilities depending on the nature of the hub? I always make this example about Park Station. Park Station is a national hub. It's owned by PRASA. You have Wanderers rank there. That's a part that's in the PRASA precinct. Cape Town Station is another example. You've got a taxi rank right on top of the station. It's not on the side, or anyway, it's right on top of the station on the PRASA infrastructure. Who owns that rank? Is it PRASA? Is it the city of Cape Town? In case of Park Station, is it the city of Johannesburg? What is the role of the industry in relation to ranking facilities? You have vast experience over the years, going back to donkey years. Let's bring that experience to bear and say, this is the problem with ranking facilities, and this is how we can resolve it. Then and we can find solutions. The other problem that also any better is illegal operators. There's many reasons why illegal operators emerge. You know that. And we've had a number of dispensations over the years to try to legalize illegal operations. But for as long as your regulatory framework is weak, you are never going to be able to solve that problem. So those two things, there's an umbilical cord that binds those two things. We know in the past we had started with the Be-Legal campaign quite early on in the taxi process, and then we went to a special legalization process, but we're back here. And illegal operators are not assisting you as well. But we're saying we need to find each other. We need to find a lasting solution. Sometimes some associations are also part of the problem because they would actively recruit illegal operators to establish a footprint in a particular area. It's not assisting anybody. We say the reasons because now the same challenge that you have when operating licenses are issued without any consideration of is there a market when buses and everybody else come into your space. The same thing with illegal operators because the cake, the slice of the cake that is there, now it means you must cut it many times in terms of because the customer base is not growing. But the number of illegal operators is quite huge. There's an exercise that is currently being done by one of the entities that's working with RTMC. But how many illegal operators we have in the country? How many legal operators? I know the number of taxis in the country because we're still doing a thumb suck. Because even the E-Natis does not tell you if this combi is a taxi or it's not. But in terms of the legal operations, the operating licenses in the country currently stand at 167,000. You know, with the Eastern Cape with 19,900 operating licenses in terms of the system But there's an estimation that there's anything between 63,000 to 100,000 illegal operations in the country. So we need to think long and hard about how do we address this problem. Do we just kick them out, chuck them out of the system, lock them up and throw them in jail? Is that a solution? Is that going to help anybody? Or should we think about a dispensation? Mhlawumbe sithi ke mphathiswa khawukhe usinike ithuba ubanike amnesty aba bantu bafumane operating licenses, then sivale ke ngoku sifake isitshixo emnyango. Sizawusebenzisana in terms of how we manage the process. But you must meet your end of the bargain in relation to your operating licenses and planning. We will meet our end of the bargain by ensuring Gucci our operational legal. Those are some of the ideas. And they are not limited to what is being said there, to what is being said. On some of the inputs that have come along from the district makhutlas and others across the country, even recommendations to say, perhaps Makasiti Kango issues operating licenses. Let's ask the minister to put a moratorium while we clean this up. While we clean this up so that we have a clear picture in terms of what is going on and who is in this industry. The other important document is about empowerment. The most important thing about empowerment, the minister has been quite emphatic that any empowerment model that we agree to must be a model that benefits right up to that last operator, unala taxi one usemkanduli uyakabini ngeveke rengine. It must not be a model that only benefits only a few people by virtue of them in leadership positions. Every single operator must see the economic benefits. And they must have their place in the sun. Apos Kalakona is to reimagine the taxi recap. The taxi recap, when it was introduced in 1999, I know sometimes abanye bathi ngo-2006, ayiqala ngo-2006 taxi recap, iqale ngo-1999, nguMinister uMac Maharaj. The objective of the taxi recap was to transform the economics of the taxi industry. At that time, in taxi recap, there was a tender, an international tender. The idea was that the taxi industry must have ownership right from the manufacturing of these vehicles. Manufacturing, the retail, the maintenance, right across the value chain. At the time, the plan was, I can share with you some anecdotes. Fortunately, I've been in this space long enough. I was part of that original team. When we shortlisted the 6 companies that were shortlisted from that tender to manufacture the new vehicles that were supposed to be purpose-built, with a specification that was developed by the task team that comprised of trade and industry, SAPS and others. There were 6 companies. I hope I can remember all of them. Mercedes-Benz, South Africa, a Chinese company, Gongchung, Iveco, Gas in Russia. There were 2 others, AMC, not the AMBs, AMC. There was a company that was South African, Afinta Motor Corporation, and there was a 6th one, I can't remember it now. One of the things we said to Mercedes-Benz in particular, when we met with their board in Germany, because we said we're not going to sit with Mercedes-Benz South Africa, we want the mother company, so that the commitment is there. We said, we're not going to allow you to say, if you win this tender, Plant East London, is they going to be manufactured there? No. You will establish a new company where the taxi industry will have shares in. Then you can contract your plant in East London to manufacture these vehicles. They must have ownership and benefits. The issue about the taxi recap was that we talk about the recapitalization crisis. You need to establish new layers of revenue so that nisokwazi recapitalizes taxes at the end of the economic. What is happening right now? You go and buy a taxi. I want to make an example about the scrapping allowance. It's 129,000. When you go and scrap your taxi, you get 129,000. If you still want to stay in the industry, your vehicle, you know this better than me, probably costs you, a new taxi costs what, 600,000. That 129,000, the best it will do is to help you to put a deposit. But then you still get caught up, stuck in this vicious debt cycle. You're still going to spend another couple of years paying back that taxi. Government has already spent more than 4 billion on the taxi recap. And there's more billions that are still going to be spent. The question is that we must answer honestly. who are the real beneficiaries of this investment that has been made? Is it yourselves? We don't think so. We think the real beneficiaries of this tax recap are the banks, the retailers, all the corporates. But the money doesn't come back to you. Now that narrative must change, because these are billions. This is serious money that you need to benefit from. So part of when we talk about an economic empowerment model is to say, how do we take ownership of this value chain? That even this investment and other investments that come into this space benefits the industry. We keep the money circulating within the industry. We are saying, government is saying, the scrapping entity, there's a company now that is scrapping. That company, at the end of its contract, it must be owned by the industry. You need to develop a model and agree in terms of what is that vehicle that is going, because that scrapping entity is not just making money out of scrapping your cars. There's metal then that, as a result of that must go be sold to somewhere else. But also the recapitalization crisis is about, we said in the first, after the entrepreneur, one of the things that we started implementing when the co-op model came up was taxi retail installations, infrastructure that you will own. But at the time, the model was around the co-ops. We've had co-ops, we've had the experience. What are the challenges? How do we improve on that? I'm not going to go into much detail. So one of the iterations of the elements that have come in is banking co-ops. There's also models like Western Cape. They've introduced the Blue Dot model. There's other experiences called Rustenburg, where they've established associations, private companies. There are also other experiences where BRT has been rolled out, where taxi industry has established vehicle operating companies that then have ownership of the BRT. Not just have the market, but also you also own. I mean, an example, it may not be the best example. The first phase of Rea Vaya Piotrans is 60% owned by the industry. Those Rea Vaya buses that run across Johannesburg, 60% of them are owned by the taxi industry, because that scrapping allowance bought them shares into those buses. But I'm certain with your experience, you look at the various model. We also brought the model of a banking co-op because it's very different from a co-op, the co-op that we've had. National Treasury has even established a banking cooperative development agency to assist in terms of if you want to establish a banking cooperative, because banking cooperatives in our country have less than 1% penetration rate. But in countries such as Canada and the US, it's much higher. In the US, it's about 50%. In Canada, more than 60%. That banks owned by cooperatives. It's one of the options, so that when you go and buy that vehicle, when you go and get that scrapping allowance, it doesn't go to ABSA or SA Taxi or somebody else. It goes to a cooperative that you own that's going to give you preferential rate in terms of financing your next taxi. When it declares dividends, there must be money that comes to your pocket. So those are some of the options and the discussions that are in this document. But the document also helps you in terms of what are some of the opportunities. Even whatever business, if you decide you want the model that's best for you based on your experience is a private company, what are the opportunities? I spoke about the tax scrapping because that's a pot of money that's already on the table. In fact, the current contract says that current scrapping entity must be 60% owned by the industry. We talk about manufacturing, maintenance, and all of that. Those are opportunities that are available now. The last discussion document talks about professionalization. Again, professionalization is a two-way street. First of all, as we're saying that the industry needs to professionalize, what does that mean? Professionalize can mean many things. It means that we need to imagine an industry of the future where the kind of service that you get in an aeroplane should not be a foreign concept when you are in a taxi. Where the employees of the industry are professional and they are looked after, the conditions of service of them. Where the conduct of the operators on the road on the road is within acceptable level, where the concept of the customer is king is upheld. That those people who use our taxis, because those are the people who make money for us, how do we treat them? Is it acceptable? Is it professional? The MEC spoke about training. Training is critical, and training must be focused because we need to mobilize all this, but there's so many funds. In fact, once we formalize our operations into businesses, whether co-ops or whatever the shape or form, one of the key requirements in complying with tax laws is skills development levy. That 1% of your wage bill must go towards the training of your employees. The issues around gender-based violence, the conversations about gender-based violence in the industry has been muted for too long. Now you must remember now, when we say taxi industry, we're talking about everyone, including e-hailing, meter taxis, everyone. There have been reports. You pick up a newspaper, bold, somebody was raped using an e-hailing. It's unacceptable and it needs to occupy center stage. As an industry, we must be the first ones to say, not in our name. Not in our name. Gender-based violence is a cancer that needs to be eradicated. But also when you talk about professionalization, as I said, it's a two-way street. Government also needs to start treating the industry as a business, as professionals. The expectation that the industry needs to behave in a particular manner must also reflect in the manner in which the industry is treated by the authorities. And then some of the issues relate to passenger issues, to issues around around people who are physically challenged. But this is a conversation that's not only about the industry itself, it's also about the entire value chain. Manufacturers have a huge responsibilities. Municipalities, government, basically, let me just not say municipalities, the infrastructure. Because it's well and good for the industry to adopt universal standard and have taxes, but if those taxes are not able, there are no ramps where the disabled people are able to get into those taxes. So the issue about universal standards universal access must cut across. I'm not going to go into the detail. The other slides were about the future, because we're saying, while we have challenges now, but we must look into the future. So that we don't get caught napping as we did with the e-hailing, we must start imagining the future. This slide, I wanted to share this slide. This is very important, that the minister has made a firm commitment that this industry must benefit from the subsidy regime. At the end of the day, the empowerment model must be anchored on two things, on formalization and economic benefits, starting with the subsidy. Now, the conversations with Treasury are meant to achieve a subsidy model that can be implemented in the next financial year. This slide just shows you that it just shows you in terms of how we intend to achieve that with what we currently have, with the money that's currently in the kitty. There's no new money here. Of course, there's going to be a lot of backlogs. But part of the conversation is that there are all these grants that are currently there today. The conversation is that we need to consolidate these grants into a public transport fund. But part of the conversation about subsidy is, who are we subsidizing? Are we subsidizing the operator, or are we subsidizing the commuter? You are an industry that has a 66% market share, yet you don't get 1 cent or 1 cent. We've got a PTOG, an operations grant of 6.3 billion currently, and a whole lot of other funds. So that's part of the conversation. I thought it's important to share with you this slide so that you know that there is a lot of work that has been done towards getting to that point where the minister made a commitment that subsidy must no longer be lip service, but must be a reality. Now, some of the issues they talk about the future, the IPTNs, I think the minister has also been emphatic that around public transport, the taxi industry must be the beneficiary of choice. But also there are new technologies. There are new technologies that are emerging. We know that there was flying taxis have been unveiled. There was a car show in Dubai in the last year, where there's newer technology. While we're still talking e-hailing, there's now flying taxis. Europe is busy developing standards for flying taxis, which is the next generation challenge that we have to be faced with. Because the concept of flying taxis, it's a major disruptor that changes the landscape. Because questions arise, who's going to regulate this? Is this an aviation regulation? Is it public transport? And you see, this may seem fantastical, maybe seem like it's something of the future. But one of the things that the COVID phenomenon has done, it has catapulted us right into the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. We need to start thinking about those. We need to start developing standards. One of the issues as well, I know early in the early days of the entrepreneur, we spoke about diesel as an economic fuel, as a fuel of choice for the taxi industry. At that time, we even had 36 licenses that were issued to the taxi industry, but we never managed to get that far in terms of allocating those 36 licenses for you to be able to have fuel outlets where you can be able to sell diesel on discount. Now we have electric cars. The advent of electric cars is here with us. It's not tomorrow. It's going to have a knock-on impact. So the idea is that out of the conversations we must have out of this Lekgotla is about imagining the future, to say, we want our place in the sun. How do we achieve that? The minister has made a comment that said, infrastructure, how to achieve that? Taxi recap, how do we achieve that? There's a lot of pots of monies, but it should not just be about money that goes to the pocket. It must be about how do we create a sustainable industry that is professional, that is able to sustain itself. Thank you, Program Director. My apologies for taking too long.
Thank you, Mr. Vengele. I know it was a bit longish, the presentation, but I think we needed it. I am tempted to give over to Mr. Yolel so that we can then have a bit of a discussion in terms of the previous item and find a way in which we deal with commissions going forward. Deputy Chair, may I ask you to come forward so that you can make the reflection from the industry, and then we will then look at the time, see what are the other logistical arrangements here, and then we'll guide the program going forward. Over to you, Deputy Chair.
All right, imphulaphula ekhaya masikwamkele kwakhona kwesi isigaba silapha ke East London ICC apho kubanjwe khona iProvincial Taxi Lekgotla ebiziweyo yona nguye umphathiswa wezothutho kuzwelonke isekela mphathiswa nguye khoyo umama uMagazi ebambisene ke naye umama oweziwe Tikana Gxothiwe. Silapha ke namhlanje bezama into bona kubekho izinto ekuzawuchankcathwa kuzo ekuzanywa ukulungiswa le industry yonotaxi okanye yezothutho ngokuthe gabala njengoba sisazi ke uba sikule nyanga yezothutho. Ndifuna ke wena mphulaphula ekhaya mhlawumbi awukho apha kodwa ke uyachaphazeleka uye phaa kwikhasi lethu lonxibelelwano Facebook, Keith Ngesi Radio, Keith Ngesi Digital TV, okanti ke no-YouTube sikwakhona apho uthi nje Provincial Taxi Indaba uzasifumana khona yonke into usasazo ngqo apha. Mhlawumbi ke uyazibuza into yobana kanye kanye zeziphi izinto ekuzawuxoxwa ngazo apha. Utata ke uMr L Venkile nguye lo usukayo apho ke kupodium acacisayo esenza i-road map ezama ukuthi thakaca eyona nto izokwenziwa apha. Uzibandakanyile ke izinto ngezinto ngokohlukana kwazo eqala kumcimbi we-leadership ye-Santaco, i-structure esiya esithi bekungakuhle uba mhlawumbi yonke le nto ingenziwa njengendawo apho kuzawuxhonkxwa khona imikhombandlela kuxoxwe into yobana kuza kwenziwa njani na, ingabi ngumbutho nje onoteksi kodwa ke ibe isi-statutory body ekwenziwa kuzo imithetho. And wabechaphazela ke nento yoba eyona mnqantsa ungamandla i-operating licenses, ii-license eziye zikhutshwe ezithatha ixesha athi umntu eaplayile angayifumani kwangethuba le license. Ezinye ke izinto kuzawuchankcathwa kuzo. And waphinda wachaphazela nendlela i-behavior yamapolisa, ngoba amapolisa kwawona kufumaniseka into yobana akwangabanini teksi kwawona. Waphinda wathetha ke nge-National Public Transport Regulator, nayo ikhona phakathi kwimiba ezawuthi ke ichatshazelwe apha namhlanje. Zithethiwe ke izinto bezama into yobana kuthi kubreykwa kusiwa ke apha kwezo komishoni zizawuthi ke zibe khona emizuzwini nje kuba ukwangoku nje basakwenza imibuzo, kuphendula imibuzo inabe izawusuka apha ke eflorin. Sizawubuyela ke kubo xa kusenziwa ke i-reflections ne-position by i-taxi industry, yona ezakwenziwa ke nguye isekela sihlalo we-Santaco uMr Z Yolelo. Kodwa ke mphulaphula ndiyafuna ukrobisa ngoba kwezi komishoni kuzawuxoxwa kuzo njengoba besithilo ke ekudliwanondlebe belingaphambili belibanjwe nguMr Ngesi into yobana ubumbano nobunkokheli ikomishoni yokuqala leyo, kuphindwe kubekho i-taxi industry regulations, eziphi izinto eziza kwenza into yobana i-industry lena yoonoteksi kuchankcathwe kuzo. Okwesithathu, taxi industry empowerment model, apho baza kuxhotyiswa khona njengabanini beteksi okanye ngabantu abakule business okanye kolu shishino lwayo iteksi. And okokugqibela bathi taxi industry professionalization and customer care, ngoba ke kuyabonakala into yobana kukhona ukungaphatheki kakuhle kwabakhweli ngoonoteksi nento yobana indlela ekuthethwa ngayo ngoonoteksi xa bethe. So ndiyafuna ke wena mphulaphula, laa mntu uqhuba iteksi, wena mntu kule business yezothutho njalo njalo, ube kanti uzawuya phaa kwikhasi lethu lonxibelelwano Facebook page Keith Ngesi Radio, Keith Ngesi Digital TV, and also phaya kwikhasi lonxibelelwano uYouTube. Ziyaqhubeka apho, yonke into eyenzeka apha uzayifumana. Sakhe sifune ke sibuyele phaa ngaphakathi apho sizawumamela into yobana ithini imibuzo, ngoba kuthethile uDeputy Minister, uthethile umphathiswa wezothutho ephondweni uMamozi Wetikana Gxothiwe, uthethile uMr Venkile. Ingaba mhlawumbi bathi mhlawumbi ke enye into endithe ke mna ndabe kanti ke ndiyayiqaphela kwinto eyenzeka apha phakathi lulwimi olusetyenziswayo. Andazi, andifuni ukuthi luyingxaki, kodwa ndiqaphele into yobana uninzi kusetyenziswa isiNgesi. Andazi noba ayizuba nanto na leyo, kodwa ke sakhe sive into yobana izawuhamba iphelele phi na, ngoba oonoteksi bona baphumile, abanini teksi basuka Mbombozono sephondo leMpuma Kapa uzozimasa lo mcimbi. Siyathemba ke into yobana bazawukwazi uba bakhuphe nako okungaphakathi kubo, bebuza yonke into abafuna banqwenela ukuyazi ukusukela apha ephondweni uyokutsho phaya ke kuzwelonke ku-ofisi kamphathiswa uFikile Mbalula. Nditshilo ke mphulaphule ndathi ke inyanga yothutho, yiloo nto ke kukho imisitho ekumila kunje, kwaye Keith Ngesi Radio, Keith Ngesi Digital TV engashishiziyo ikuphathela lo sasazo ngqo silapha e-East London ICC. Igama lam ke ndingunolo wakwaVitsha, ndingubabes Radio, babes Wireless, ubabes kaNomathotholo. Ndifuna ukukhuthaza into yobana ungaphoswa lolu sasazo ngqo phaya kwikhasi lethu lonxibelelwano. Xa sizawubuyela ngoku ngaphakathi sive into yobana banayo nemibuzo kwezi zinto bezithethwa apha okanye mhlawumbi icacile okanye mhlawumbi isingesi asitolikwa asaze sakhe sifuna ke siphose pha ngaphambili sizova into yobana kwenzeka ntoni na ngaphakathi.
Xhaswa ke ngamanye amaphondo kuba engenazo ii-mother bodies. Olo luvo olo labonakala ngongathi ke luluvo olungenakuncedisa mntu. Iluluvo olubalulekileyo for i-Eastern Cape. Yiyo ke le nto uSantako nationally engazuthetha nto nge-mother bodies ngento yokokuba akukho bantu kula maphondo bakwaziyo uorganiza ii-associations okokuba zihlale under one roof nge-constitution enye respectively. That is u-ACTA, u-Border Alliance and uncedo. Kunabantu ke apha abane-credit abangayinikwayo yokumanya ii-associations zibe ngumbutho omnye. Akunabalula ke okokuba ngaba abo bantu kungavele nje kungene kuyo nayiphi na iprogram bengaconsultwanga properly. Isinika ingxaki loo nto. Ndiyathemba kusisicelo soba ii-mother bodies apha eliphondweni maziyifumane a full recognition. Ngeli xesha siya kule Indaba uba ngaba sinyaniselene isemdleni nyani njengebonakala uba ngoku urhulumente une-appetite yokuyixhasa i-taxi industry. Masiqiniseke into yokokuba iteksi ezingekho mthethweni ziyekile uthutha abantu. Urhulumente makasincedise abantu babuyiselwe ezirenkini. Akukho nto ibuhlungu njengokuba i-taxi industry ibamba umthetho yobeka imoto ezirenkini kubekho abantu abaphala apha esithubeni ngemoto ezincinci bethatha abantu bebasa kwezi ndawo laa teksi iphole phaa erenkini iya kuyo. Yenze loo nto leyo ukutshona kwelanga iteksi khange isebenze ibe inenkuntyula yesitolment ekufuneka isihlawulile xa kuphela inyanga. Umsebenzi wethu uxhilwa nje nangubani. Urhulumente uyayazi loo nto ise-clean. Asinangxaki nomntu onelungelo loyokokuma phaa ahayikhe ngoba kuthiwa lilungelo lakhe. Sinengxaki nale teksi incinci ifika imthathe. Asihlukumezi bantu abame phaa abahayikayo. Asinanto kwenza nabo. Lilungelo nyhani loba umntu eme ahayike xa efuna yena uzahambe kakuhle ayokhwelela esitratweni angawukhwelela erenkini. Ingxaki ke ngoyile teksi incinci imthatha izana kahlanu emonti isuke emthatha iyana kayi-10 ebhayi isuke emonti njalo njalo. Kukho iteksi ekhedamileyo phaa elinde aba bantu. Loo nto yonke ke ilidishele endlaleni kwicala le-taxi industry. Apho kwindlala ke kubakho uchuku. Apho kukho uchuku khona kubakho umlo. Apho kukho umlo khona kubakho ijele nezibhedlele namangcwaba. Yini nale empowerment mamqwathi inhle kangaka nizanayo ungasesuyihambise nje usiboleke isipola transport siyavana sibe lapha kuthi futhi sasiqhuba kakuhle ngoba sisazi ntoba siyinxalenye yoku-empowerishwa kwethu singabe silinda i-subsidy andithi ayizofika izawufika kodwa sekukho le into ikhoyo. Masisinikwe isikolo transport size kuthi. Ngasincedisa kakhulu loo nto. Ingaphinde ithathe ixesha into yokokuba ii-resolutions ezithathweyo yi-industry zi-implementwe emveni kwe-20 years. Kukho ezalo nyaka kuphela nezalo nyaka ngapha lipheleyo ebezithathiwe ii-resolutions to stop i-taxi violence. Kodwa ezo resolutions kudeviatiwe kuzo. Azinanzwanga. as a result ingathi khange kwenzeke nto. Kutheni into yokugqitywa kuyo singayiboni eqinisekisa urhulumente into yoba le nto kugqitywe kuyo yasayinwa iyenzeka? Mhlawumbi naleni izayithatha i-40 years sesibuya kuloo Indaba, ngoba ii-resolutions zalapha ziyapakishwa zigcinwe kuzovela ke loo mphathiswa ngelo xesha uyawuwa ngathi uza kwenza umohluko. Saziqhwaba izandla zide zidumbe okokuba ngaba ii-resolutions ezithathwayo azimiliselwa. Makakumiliselwe ezi zayizolo linye nezalo nyaka kuphelele nezalo nyaka pha liphele ii-resolutions ezi bezinqanda umbhodama apha eliphondweni. Sibone into yokuba nyhani ngoku urhulumente uzikhomithile into yokokuba ibhizinesi le yeteksi ibhizinesi ayithandayo. Iibhasi ezilapha eliphondweni ezisuka kumaphondo angaphandle asizazi uba zingaphi. Zizothatha esisonka sincinci sisisherayo. Eliphondo ke liphondo noko kwicala lezoqoqosho eliqhokekileyo ngoba liphondo eliliphandle. Umsebenzi wethu umka neebuses futhi ziyakuthanda apha e-Eastern Cape iibhasi zabantu esibabiza ke ngoongxowankulu. Mhlawumbi ke i-department yona iyabazi uba ingayi boongxowankulu. Sikhompyutha noongxowankulu apha. Siyavuma ke umthetho welizwe uyavuma into yoba banelungelo nabo ngabalapha into yoba mabakhombe. Akusajongwa ke into yokokuba singakanani esisonka beza kuso, kodwa when it comes to iteksi kubakho laa mithetho ide ichaze into bii-permits ifuna zibe ngaphi zithini. Singabuza zingaphi ii-permits zezi bhasi zoongxowankulu abasebenza apha. Singabantu nje ababonakalayo into yokokuba mababanjwe abantu abenza udushe leteksi, mababotshwe basuke phakathi kwethu. Kushiyeke thina sisindisiweyo apha kwi-industry. Abantu bemfazwe babawuvalelwa, asibadingi. Le into masiyi-emphasize. Kukho i-conflict of interest njengoba besitsho apha utata bethetha apha. When it comes to into yokokuba i-taxi industry isebenze smoothly from i-civil servants ne-law enforcement agencies, in particular kweli lam iphondo. Ayilolishwa into yokokuba umuntu awugade umsebenzi wakhe. Umsebenzi uyagadwa. Ungasitya kanjani sonke esigqojozwe ziimpuku? Awunawukwazi usitya. Funeka ucreate an-environment whereby impuku zingazuyokwazi uyofika esonkeni ngoba esasonka sesakho. Uba ngaba ngamapolisa anemoto ezincinci zotekisa ilegali, kuzawuthiwa ngomso oonoteksi zindlavini kuba bevolontiya. Kaloku urhulumente lo ngowabantu, ngowethu lona urhulumente. Ayinguye laa rhulumente phambi ko-94. Siyamthanda lo rhulumente, kuyanyanzeleka simncedisile. In the absence of law enforcement agencies, kumele into yokokuba sivolontiye siyi-community. Sinqanda abantu bangaphula umthetho. Into ena isikiphinde ijike nathi loo nto. Kuthiwe sithi aba bophula umthetho. Ngoba lokhu kwaphula umthetho into yoba imoto ifike ime phezu komgcobomvu edolophini ihayikisa abantu. Siyi-community yokuthini xa sisawubukela loo nto? Singayinqandi into yoba phezu komgcobomvu akumiswa. Awunawuzumisa imoto phantsi kwebhodi enostop ebhalileyo into yoba apha akuhayikho, ufike wena umisa imoto. Siyi-community yothini? Ngabeli lizwe silisaphi xa sinobukela abantu abanjalo besenza loo nto? We have to stop them. Sithengisa ngorhulumente mosiba sizawubukela abantu besophula umthetho phambi kwethu. Kude kuthiwe amapolisa akangomoya oyingcwele akakho kuyo yonke indawo. Kumele into yoba njenge-community siwancedise. Kodwa xa siwancedisa kule nto yonqanda i-hiking sport kuthiwa saphula umthetho. Sizawufikelela kwimeko ethi intloko yesebe. Ayizibali ixanduva lasengcobo lokokuba kuthiwe babanjiwe andikhuthazi laphula umthetho guys funa siyenze professional le nto. Ayizibali ixanduva lasengcobo into yoba kuthiwe babanjiwe batshajiwe kuba bebenqanda abantu abophula umthetho. Usuka ngoku ubheka phambili xa kuthiwa ii-taxi operators bezinqanda umuntu owaphula umthetho elayisha illegally zaze zabanjwa ngendlela erayithi mayibe lixanduva lephondo mamabhitsha ingabi lixanduva lala branch. Iyawuthi ifike ibe ikhonini ke imoto eyenziwa apha eSouth Africa mhlawumbi yona sayithenga cheap ngoba ziyadura ezi sihamba ngazo ngoku sisebenza ngazo ngoba izo zalapha. Lo nyaniso mayivele makungenziwanga ngathi ezi moto zezalapha ayizo zalapha ezi moto. Besingobani into bizawuqalwa sithi into yoba masimanufacturishe imoto thina asizukwazi. Sisaguliswa na unganikwa imali leyo ye-COVID kuba besingasebenzi. Baphathisa bami nithetha nemilwelo esilambile bantwana bahle. Khasisebenza inyanga ntandathu. Khona ndancama osefikile. Kodwa ke malungu se-engagile xa nizawuhlala phansi nabaphathiswa. Simchazile isicelo soba mayize njani imali. Akufuneka imali eza kunoteksi mphathiswa iqale imaniwela ibhorho ezininzi. Usanda yakho phaa phezulu makangacimbi uyibhriji yemali ezakuthi. Sivene ngaloo nto. Wangabi iambasada yokumane icimbi wamane ekhongozela neyase-Eastern Cape imali. Usazi ukhona nalapha. Izawuza kusazi iphume kusazi isebantwini bayo. La madoda mawo imali yaseGoli. Asisondeli nathi emalini yaseGoli. Sifika sibe zindwendwe pha. Siyirhala siyincame. Into yoba siyirhalele siyayazi uba iza kwenziwa ntoni. Siyabazi futhi uba bayifunela ntoni nalethu. Mayingabisaya ke ethu pha mayize ngapha ngasekhayeni. Masiyibulele into yoba thina industry apha eliphondweni i-department le ikhokhelwe ngabantu abanomdla wokusebenza nathi. Ibinqabile loo nto. Siqale uyibona kuMamarhawu ilapha kuMamqwathi ngoku. Elo thuba funeka silincoma. Sisebenzise lanyaniso ayithethileyo uMamqwathi into yokokuba okwakaloku nje apha eliphondweni usazi thina singisandakho. Masivaleni ke ngoku le mingxunye ivulekileyo. Sihambe simane caka into yoba sawude siyonkinkana kuyo kuba silambile. Imali ize kweli cala sikulo. Umuntu ongangosantakho makangathethi egameni le-industry. Ngoba usantakho uthunywa ku-Port Alliance, uthunywa ngu-Actor, uthunywe ngu-Uncedo. So omnye umntu masimdeclaration as a third force. And masingabi norhulumente ababini. Masibe norhulumente omnye. I-Department of Transport ke ngoma isimele. Isikhusele kule nto iqhubekayo. Ngoba ekugqibeleni izasifaka engxakini le nto. nansi industry ilapha masingevike ngokwenye meeting enayo urhulumente kwenye indawo ingeyiyo le. I-Department of Transport ke ngokwekufuneka isincedisile ufakana imilomo namanye amasebe norhulumente lokuba kukho ingxaki ele. Umuntu othanda iteksi makeze eteksini. Nali isango angena ngalo amalungisa weteksi ngusandakho. Sikuthandile mamqwathi xa uthetha ngola hlobo wena sayibambe kusandakho. Sithandile DM xa ume ngento ethi urhulumente umuntu amthetha naye ngemicimbi yeteksi official ngusandakho. Masingaphazanyiswa ke zincoko ezingasindawo. Sincedise mamqwathi. Sincedise sithembele kuwe. Uba bekusithi uya i-ministers ekwayo MEC ba appointwa sithi esinoke siphinde sityikitye la ufike lo xesha. Le empowerment make siyibone isenzeka nakwi-departments zonke zikarhulumente. Nazi ii-quantums zintsha amapolisa azisebenzisa as ivantyi zingazothathwa apha kuthi nje. Ayizophinde ilayishe umuntu izawuba yivantyi leyo. Arhola umnikazi wala teksi ngonikezela ngala teksi yoba yivantyi pha. Arhola umnikazi wala teksi ngonikezela ngala teksi yoba yiambulance phayana. Itheni le empowerment ingakhawulezi ide ifike? Sawuncediswa yi-department ke ekuthinini amaphupha anjalo afezekiseke. Imisebenzi yethu njengebetshilo uDM minintsi kakhulu kodwa i-department ayisimeli sizawulimala. Imisebenzi yethu ithe sa. I-stationary singahanjiswa sithi apha singazikhupha ii-quantums erenkini sikhulule nezo zitulo siyakwanjiswa i-stationary. Kunini sathenjiswa ngento yokuba bekufamba sithi kakade nabakhuriyayo. Kutheni singayiboni senzeka loo nto? I-transport yethu. Kutheni le nto sizawuba zindwendwe esonkeni sethu? Mhlawumbi ngaphambili ndingalityanga ixesha lakho. Kuyo yonke into ezawuxoxwa apha uzayiva into ethi we are in for a public company Siliphondo. Futhi ke i-consultant yokwenza loo nto sayicela kuwe ngoba sifuna izudwe kakuhle ibe yinto ezakwenza into yoba naxa sesingekho umuntu ozawuza kule industry afike iqhuba. Sizayicacisa ke xa lifikile lo thuba. I-public company esakukhondoza ngayo DM Siliphondo leMpuma Koloni. Public company asizothetha nge-cooperative as a province. And ke siya nayo lo idea pha kwa national. Sawuthetha nge-public company thina. Izawuthetha ukuthi ke mhlawumbi sawubuya amaphondo esibhozo okokuba ngaba sizawununuswa ngenye into. Le public company yethu noba isebenzeka apha eliphondweni unational angayihoyi ke xa kuba akazofuna udilishana. Kodwa thanks God into yokuba athi nayo singayikhetha. Sesiyikhethileke. Siya kwi-formalization siyayivuma i-formalization kufuneka ikhona. But in the form of i-public company kuthi. Akufuneka siyifihle loo nto. Asirhaleli ukuqoqodisa asiqoqodisi bantu. Sifuna uengage ngoba nathi sizawu engage kule nto. Ngalo mazwi yona i-taxi violence DM iphelile soziphinde bekhona. Qha nje i-resolutions ebezithathiwe zokucima i-taxi violence masi-implementwe. Ike yaphinde yakhona i-taxi violence uyazi uba umuntu o-implementa izigqibo akazi-implementi. That means usathanda into yoba ikhona into ayibhenefithayo xa kusiliwe. Bakhona abantu abahlala phezu kwezi-resolutions apha elifondweni abangafuni uzi-implementa. Abaphakame bawuzi-implementa. Kujonge uyawuphinde bekhona na ingxaki. Ndicinga into yoba ke ziprezidanti zam, council yam ehloniphekileyo, zii-members zam, andithethi into isuka kum, ndithetha into eyiminqweno yenu. Uba ndithethe out of order indimi lo bethetha. Nini, ndithunywe nini. Iphondo libonile uDM nomphathisi balime njani. Futhi le appetite yokokuba i-Department of Transport izimisele ukusebenzisana ngolu hlobo ne-taxi. Mangatyiwa imali yephondo kwi-department, imali yethu kumane kusithiwa nyhani kutreyinwa abantu. Bapha abantu batreyinwa betreyinelwa phi? Ngoba abantu befama batreyinwa sithi. Into enako uzandingxolisa kumamqatha uphuma kwale ntlangano. Besaske sivolontiye siyobakhangela nabantu batreyinayo uba njenge-community uba niyenzela loo nto. As community members ngalo sinaxanduva lokuqiniseka uba urhulumente wethu akarojwa, siyamkhusela. Enkosi mhlali ngaphambili, uxolo bantu bemde. Ndiyabulela.
Deputy Chair, ndiyakuva uba unawo umoya. We're trying to manage the program so that we don't exceed or go beyond the time that we have allocated for this program. Okwam ke kuba ngumbhexeshi nje wayo. Ingawi sizame ba mayibuyele njengabantu bebeqale late. I think there's a lot that is said by the deputy chairperson, and my sense when I'm listening, it may shorten the clarities and questions that may arise. With your permission, I wish that we take lunch now until it's now 25 to 2. I'm looking at the numbers here. Let us say 2:15. We are back here, and then we will continue with the program. I'm told that lunch will be served downstairs just to ensure social distancing and all other related, spacing requirements that we should observe. So if you allow me, then let us break for lunch now. We'll come back, and I'm sure you were taking notes while the speakers were talking, so that when we come back, we'll start with that session. We'll make it very short, and then we'll go to commissions. May I then ask that we allow the TM, the MEC, MMC, I think you should join the leadership as well. There's a lady there at the door with the red dress. She will direct you to the room, I think it's the holding room where we were for yourselves, the leadership. And then all of us, then sihle siye apha ezantsi. Lunch will be served there. Please, let's be punctual. Let's keep it to the 45-50 minutes that I've given, so that we can be here at 2:15. Thank you very much. Let's break for lunch.
Alright, ke mphulaphuli siselapha East London ICC apho kubanjwe khona i-Provincial Transport or Taxi Indaba. Ulapha ke uDeputy Minister Ms D Magazi ekhatshwe nguye ke umphathiswa wezothutho kwiphondo leMpuma Kapa, umama oweziwe Tikana Gxothiwe, and sizivile ke izithethi zithetha ebe khona naphakathi kwabo besihla ngoku phaya kwipodium omele umbutho wonotaxi uDeputy Chairperson weSantaco uMr Z Yolelo naye echancatha kwizinto ngezinto ezahlukeneyo eziyimicelimngeni abajongane nayo bona bengumbutho onotaxi. Phakathi kwazo uyayichaza into yobana kuyabonakala into yobana zikhona i-law enforcement agencies, bakhona abantu basemthethweni ekubonakala into yobana nabo bakuphakathi kushishino lweteksi lwezothutho ingakumbi, and wabesithi bona ke bangabantu njenga-citizen, njengabahlala bemi beli loMzantsi Afrika abakwazi ubukela xa kukho ingxubakaxaka eyenzekayo, xa bebona abantu imoto ezincinci zithutha abantu ngokungekho semthethweni okanye zisima kwindawo apho kusithiwa akuhayikhwa khona, baye bona ke bancedisane nomthetho bobasusa ze into iphume nabo, kanti bona bebezama nje ukwenza lento ke ngentetho yaselokishini yokulungisa ke i-country. And phakathi kwezinye izinto endicinga mhlawumbi izawukhe sithi xa sesimbambile sive ngumdla wakhe athe wawuvelisa apho kuthutho lwabantwana, laa nto kuthiwa ke ngabula makhumsha si-scholar transport. I-scholar transport abathi ke bayasicela into yobana sibe kanti ke bazawukwazi ukusenza, and also isebe lezemfundo kwi-stationary nalapho babe kanti ke banosiniko. So sakhe sive ke xa sesimbambile sizosabela phakathi kwezinye izinto uba bacinga uba bangayenza njani na xa benokunikwa olo xanduva. Ndiyafuna ke mphulaphuli into yobana ngoku now that kubreakwa for lunch kuyaphunywa le ngxolo ivayo ngapha ngemva kusathathwa nje ikhefu kuthathwe ilunch ze emva koko ke kuqhutyekekwe kuyo phaa kweza plenary besithetha ngayo za breakaway commissions kuzawuthi ke zixoxo. Manditsho nje mphulaphuli bazona asisayi kuzicapturisha lona ngoba zingxoxo ezenziwa ekhusini kuxoxwa la minwe la miba ndikhe ndayibandakanya ekuqaleni kuzabe kuxhentswa phezu kwayo phakathi kwayo umba wobunkokheli, umba wobunye njalo njalo, i-taxi regulations nazo iphakathi kwazo ne-empowerment. Utshilo ke naye ke uMr Yolelo esithi bafuna uqonda into yobana ngokubani na aba bantu baxhonxwayo ngezakhono, ngoba kuthiwa kukhona ingxowamali, ikhona ingxowamali ekhoyo apho ke baxhonxwa khona kodwa baboni mntu uxhonxwayo. So zezinye izinto sakhe sizisabele xa siphinda siba nayo, kodwa ke ngokwango ngokwemphulaphula ndiyafuna nje into yobana sizame ke ngokwangoku ke sikhe sithathe ke ivenkile ngoba kuyabonakala into yobana ingxolo yabantu abaphumayo babheka phaya ke kwihlelo 15 ithande ukuba ibe kanti iyasiqumelela. So mphulaphula ekhaya ndifuna ke ungemki kwikhasi lethu lonxibelelwano Keith Ngesi radio Facebook page, Keith Ngesi digital TV kunye ke nazo zonke ke ezinye amakhasi onxibelelwano ethu naku-YouTube ke sikwakhona. So bangabuya lifuna oludliwano ntlebe okanye le nto eqhubekayo apha ngalo mzuzu ungayifumana khona isenzeka kusasazo ngqo. Sakubamba ke ngoku uMr Yolelo njengokuba ke besendishilo ndakuthembisa sizawubamba ke sisabele kuye sive kuye phakathi kwezinye izinto ebethe wazikhankanya njengomntu ke ngokwalapha osuka phaya ke kumbutho Deputy Chairperson weSantaco apha kweke kwiphondo leMpuma Kapa ke sisabele kodwa ke okwangoku ke besazama into yobana asondele mandithi ngxe ndixolise ke kakhulu ngento yobana kukho lo ngxolwana uyivayo kaloku lixesha lesidlo sasemini and kudala ke abantu belapha lixesha loba bekanti ke kuzawufunyanwa into esiwa phansi kwempumlo iye ithande ke ukuthethisa noko ibe khona kingxolwana. And I think mhlawumbi abantu are reflecting on izinto ebezithethwa apha abantu basetyisa oko bekuthethwa ngoba okokoko izithetha kusukela pha ku-Deputy Minister umama osuka ephondweni kwiofisi kaMinister and nalapha ke umama oweziwe kanti ke noMr Venkile ngokwakhe. So sizakhe sizame ke ukulungisa lonto leyo kwenza ba uMr Yolelo akhe asiphe naye oko akucinga and maybe asithathe through ngezinto abacinga ba ukusukela ngoku bazawuzithatha ukubheka phambili. Ngoku ke masithathe ke uMr Z Yolelo simamkele ke apha kolusasazo ngqo sinalo apha eEast London ICC kwitaxi leRhotla. Mr Yolelo masikwamkele.
Nkosazana mandibulise kuwe, ndibulise kwigqiza lakho, ndibulise kuye nawuphi na umuntu omameleyo namhlanje ngegama lenkosi.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Enkosi tata. Uthethile uDeputy Minister, uthethile uMEC ephondweni leMpuma Kapa, uthethile uMr Venkile esandlala wangena nawe uzama ukuchaza imicelimngeni uzama ukuchaza izinto ninqwenela ukuba zenzeke. Ndikuthande xa ugqibezela usithi uba ngaba ukhe wakhona umlo woonoteksi makwaziwe into yobana ukhona umuntu ongenzanga umsebenzi wakhe kuloo nto. Kodwa ke ndifuna nje kuqala nje singekabheki phambili uziva njani ngale teksi leRhotla?
Mama ke okokuqala nje imnandi into yoba urhulumente wabantu for abantu uthi kanti kwizicwangciso zakhe unombheka phambili nenjongo zokokuba i-taxi industry ingaphuhliseka. Loo nto iyodwa nje isinika ilunda ngoba kaloku silishishini elisoloko noko ubona uba libucaluleka.
Okay.
Kodwa ke ngoku lo rhulumente wabantu uyasibonisa into yoba ukholo ntoni phakathi kwethu engurhulumente woluntu. Ngaloo mazwi ke sichwayitile into yoba sibe namhlanje nobheka phambili sizabe sithetha ngolu lwimi sithetha ngalo.
Yes. Masibulele ke loo nto. Ndifuna ke ukhe mhlawumbi unabe ngakumbi kulo mcimbi obuthetha ngawo wokubana kungumnqweno wenu into yobana mhlawumbi ningayinikwa noko iScholar Transport. Ndikuvile naxa uyithetha wabe usithi noko mamqwathi uthethe kakuhle kakhulu iScholar Transport. Ingaba mhlawumbi njengoba nisinqwenela seninazo izicwangciso eninazo enicinga uba ningasimaneja ngaso?
Enkosi mama, umcimbi weScholar Transport ayizuqala. Uwayeke ke amahlande enyuka ke athi akhona ngaphambili. Kodwa urhulumente weMpuma Kapa kulizwe lonke loMzantsi Afrika wenza imbali ngokokuba athathe onobhasi, athathe i-taxi operators ababeke endaweni enye athi makohlulelwane nasi sonke. Ngela xesha leScholar Transport sasisezandleni zebhasi neteksi endaweni inye uyawuqaphela into yokokuba amathuba emfazwe noduse ayinciphe kakhulu.
Okay.
Kwangekho nobhasi ukhala ngoba wahlukunyezwa itaxi, kwangekho nomnye u-taxi operator ohlukumeza omnye kuba kwakusetyenzwa uchuku nje lavele langcwabeka.
Laphela.
Iincuku zivele emveni kokuba kumkela msebenzi
Okay.
isebe lawuthathela kulo.
Okay.
Yenye ke indlela enodibanisa abantu kuba siya kule nto yokokuba ngoku sithetha ngale empowerment. Le project ye-scholar transport ingangaske ike kuthiwe ngake nidibane kwakhona. Nisibonise into yokuba ngenene nenyaniso le long life siyibeka apha phambi kwenu yale empowerment bayingo-short term le nto ye-empowerment izawuba long life.
Okay.
Nizayiphatha kanjani. Into ye-scholar transport ke ungayijongi kweli cala lengeniso kuphela, uyijonge nje kwicala lokokuba abantu aba bazawuhlala ngoxolo belangazelelana.
Okay.
Kuba kukho le nto ibadibanisayo ibhizinesi ibubomi injalo mntana omhlala.
Okay, ndikuva kakuhle. Uye wakhankanya nomcimbi we-stationary endicinga uba ke kwakhona inodibanisa isebe lezemfundo. Lona i-stationary esi naso ucinga fana uba ingasinye sesixhobo enisisebenzisayo ukumanya ezothutho, wena mntu webhasi, wena mntu uneteksi, wena mntu unemeter taxi?
Nkosazana, umbuzo wakho mhle kakhulu, uyasiphilisa futhi uyasincedisa. Okokuba ngaba esa stationary uDepartment of Transport uzawunkqonkqoza kwa-education, siziswe esa stationary kwa-bus industry, siziswe esa stationary kwa-taxi industry, no-meter taxi lowo. Ithetha ukuthi loo nto leyo yi-empowerment.
Okay.
Ngoba kuzawudityana aba bantu bazabe besazana uba thina sisevisa i-region ethile, thina sisevisa i-region ethile, regardless into yokuba ngubani, as long nje suka kwi-industry.
Okay.
Yenye yendlela leyo enosincedisa kakhulu, ivule futhi namathuba ngaphezu kwale ngqesho i-industry iyenzayo. Ngamanye amathuba lawo azawuphinde futhi ongezelele ingqesho.
Mhlawumbi umphulaphula ekhaya uzawuthi ke Tata Uyolelo nina ningabantu abakwazi ukuqhuba iteksi ibheke phambili. Xa kufikelelwa kwindaba edibene nokusiwa kwe-stationary ezikolweni, mhlawumbi omnye umuntu uzawuthi hayibo bacinga uba bangayenza njani. Ukhe wathetha into eyanditsala umdla xa usithi izakhono ukuqeqeshwa kwenu aniyazi uba kuqeqeshwa obani kodwa kuthiwa kuyaqeqeshwa. Ungakho nabe apho ngoba mhlawumbi xa izawuhamba iye kwi-scholar transport iye kwi-stationary mhlawumbi izawunida into yoba nibe kanti niyaxhonkqwa niyaphuhliswa izakhono zenu ukwenza uba ngoku umntu noko kuba ilicandelo angaliqhelanga mhlawumbi ukuba kulo. Ingaba olu xhonkqo lwenu luhamba luphele phi?
Enkosi mntana. Uxhonkqo kaloku kukutyala okanye kuku-investa. Ngoba xa umuntu umxhonxile ulindele imveliso, imveliso ezawunceda isizwe. I-Department of Transport kapha eliphondweni ayiqaqanga kakhulu apha kwi-taxi industry nakwi-bus industry. Olo xonxo luzawuba yinto elula, kodwa kufuneka lumanejwe yi-Department of Transport iqinisekise nee-service providers zokwenza oko zibe liqanduva le-Department of Transport. Kubekho esasivumelwano nentsayino ngqesho phakathi kwe-service provider nesebe. Sicinga into yokokuba ingenzeka kakuhle xa izawuba sezandleni zesebe eli.
Okay, kodwa ngokwangoku ungatsho nje uthi akukabikho umntu uxhonkxiweyo?
Hayi, bakhona abantu abaxhonkxiweyo kangangakokuba asinamdlelandlala.
Okay.
U-taxi finance sine-graduates namhlanje. U-taxi finance ebambisene nenye yenkampani ezivelisa iimoto ayifihlwa ke mandiyichaze, uToyota.
Okay.
Benze into yokokuba namhlanje kwizigqeba zethu zezikhokelo kubekho abantu abanezertifiketi zokuxhonkqwa from i-university yomzantsi Afrika neUniversity of Pretoria.
Okay.
Ndizama ukuthi ke zikhona
Khona
ezinye i-business partners esele ziyiqalile lento yokuba masixhonxwe.
Okay.
Ngoku kufuneka ngoku urhulumente abe kumnwe into yokokuba oluxhonxo malinabe
Okay.
wonke umuntu okule industry yezothutho ibe ngumuntu oxhonxiweyo.
All right. Xa ndiza kukhulula Mr. Yolelo umcimbi we-subsidy ingaba mhlawumbi nithe xa nujonga anuboni njengasisombululo xa ninoba kanti njenge-taxi industry ninosubsidizwa ngurhulumente kwicala le-fuel?
Yho, ityebe kakhulu le nto ithethayo. Kudala sayicela kwakula N-T-T resolution namhlanje sisithetha ngayo ikhona loo nto. Unfortunately nje ke yinto yokokuba abantu abaseziofisini ke abanye i-resolutions abakhawulezi ukuzi-implementa.
Okay.
Le nto uza nayo yinto enolutshintsha uqoqosho leli lizwe. Kwanje uba i-environment yokusebenza kwe-taxi industry ne-bus industry, ndizawuthetha nge-bus industry basingamawele. Ukusebenza kwe-taxi industry ne-bus industry kube siyaxhaswa nakumcimbi wamafutha. Loo nto nje iyodwa iSouth Africa ingaphuma endlaleni ndiyakuthembisa. Nongekho phaa kweli shishini umntu.
Okay.
Kodwa abantu bonke bangayibona uba utshintsho ngoku lukhona. Ngoba lokho umcimbi we-industry uchaphazela umuntu ophaa kuyo nomuntu osecala kwayo nomuntu osemva kwalaa mntu.
Okay, all right. Sisathetha njengento yomcimbi odibene nebhasi, umphathiswa usekela mphathiswa xa bethetha uthe i-taxi industry should be part of i-bus rapid transport system. Ingaba uyamnqinela?
Naliphini iphulo, naliphini inyathelo elizawukwenza into yokokuba sibe singabantu abakhululekileyo kwezoqoqosho siya kulixhasa.
Okay.
Kodwa nje amakhasi angadlalelwa esifubeni. Amakhasi abekwe phezu kwetafile. Asinangalixhasi naliphini uphulo elizawukwenza into yoba sibe kuqoqosho olukhululekileyo nolunamandla.
Okay, okugqibela where to from now?
Ukusuka ngoku kumele into yokokuba ngabathunywa aba balapha.
Okay.
Kumele ngokuba sithathe lo mfutho siphuma nawo apha ngoku siwuse kwi-general membership.
Okay.
I-general membership yazi okuqhubekayo.
Okay.
Uba ngoku kwenzeka ntoni, singayi kwi-national lekotla i-general membership yephondo ingayazi into yoba kwenzeka ntoni. Kufuneka into yoba ibe ngu-elethu nezi-stakeholders nee-business partners esisebenzisana nazo asizumbukela udepartment sizawuncedisa ekuthinini ngoku impempe siyibethe kwaziwe into yoba sikule ndawo ngoku sincwase uyofika phaa.
Ndiyaxolisa ngathi ndingumfundisi manje sithi xa ndizawuyeka kodwa ezinye izinto zimane zivela njengoba sithetha. Ucinga uba le migomo mine iye yabe kanti iyabekwa kuzawuxoxwa xa kubuywa ngoku ke kwisidlo sasemini yanele okanye mhlawumbi ikhunto elibalulekileyo ngoba kuthethwa ngobunye, kuthethwa ngobunkokheli, kuthethwa nge-regulations, kuthethwa nge-empowerment, kuthetha nge-professionalism ne-customer care and ke ngelishwa into yobana ushishino ngeteksi lasoloko lusayanyaniswa nobundlobongela nongakwazi uziphatha nongakwazi uthetha. Ingaba mhlawumbi le migomo ucinga uba ingangumphako enough okanye ingayimikhombandlela enokuthi ikwazi ukuthi tshintsha i-industry le yoonoteksi ukubheka phambili?
La migomo nkosazana ibalulekile. Ingayiyo imibheka phambili enokwazi utshintsha. Kodwa phaa kuyo zikhona izinto ezifuneka siziqwalasele ngelisolokhozi.
Okay.
Ubuthina kufuneka bungalahlekanga.
Okay. Uthetha ukuthini xa
xa ndithetha ngobuthina urhulumente ngoku uintervina ngoku.
Okay.
Uintervina ngoku. Kukho abantu ekudala beyithwele le nto uba masingacimi isibane.
Okay.
Kukubi, kumnandi, kusebenzeka, kungasebenzeki. Akukho nto ithandwa yi-taxi industry njengemibutho yabo.
Okay.
Noba wenzani kufuneka uyazi into yokokuba illegal entity ozayi-establisha as a formalizer apha i-ownwa phaa la association ungazi-abolish i-associations
Okay.
ngoba xa u-abolisha i-associations sinenkolo ethi ubuthina ubususile kuthi yintoni esinoya nayo emuseum xa sele ziachiveke zonke ezi zinto sithetha ngazo kufuneka kaloku ezi zinto kungathiwa umzowa ulapha waya ngaphi kufuneka kubekho a taxi industry museum apho nabasezawuzalwa njengoba bezawuthi gqibona seyiformalizekile bayazi into yoba ibisuka phina iyasincedisa ke isizwe into yembali.
Okay, okokugqibela nyani ke ngoku ingaba iSantaco xa kukho ndikhe ndavanga xa bendimamela into yobana ingaske iSantaco mhlawumbi ibe si-statutory body apha kwenziwa khona imithetho imigqaliselo ibe yibhodi elawulayo ingabi ngumbutho nje intlanganisela yemibutho ibe yi-leadership structure apho kuzawuba okanye i-council kuzawuxhonxwa khona ingaba mhlawumbi loo nto leyo ningavumelana nayo andisakhumbuli khona kwisithethi ebesiphakamise loo nto.
Ingabaluleka kakhulu but ne-leadership kaSantaco at a national level and provincial level kufuneka into yokokuba bakwazi ukulicacisa nokulicubungula eligama lithi democracy. Xa use-ofisini nge-deployment ezakho imfuno ziyancipha usisiqu kuphakama imfuno ezi ze-constituency yakho. I-problem esinayo ngoku njengoba uSantaco ebonakala ngathi uyacontestwa yinto yokokuba i-information ayisuki phezulu ize apha and abanamdla wazothatha izidingo neemfuno apha emazantsi banyuke nazo. Kumnandi nje phaa kubo uba phaa phezulu side sibabize ngamagama ke ngoku nje net uba uSantaco angake nje abuyele kulaa nto ayeyakhelwe eDurban qinisekile uba ngabamba principles neza ethics wayekhelwe phezu kwazo qinisekile le nto uyithethayo iyasincedisa into yoba uSantaco when it comes kuthethwa ngemicimbi echaphazela ezothutho nge-minibus taxis kumele babe yinxalenye yokuthatha izigqibo.
Ndiyabulela kakhulu Mr Yolelo, enkosi kakhulu ngexesha lakho. Ndiyacinga uba noko mandikukhulule ngoku nawe ukuyofumana isixhaso semphefumlo. Siyabulela kakhulu ngexesha lakho, enkosi tata.
Ndim omele babulele wena mntana omhle ngokuba uvumile into yokokuba uluvo lethu luvakale. Enkosi mntanakazi.
Siyabulela kakhulu enkosi tata. Lowo ke nguye ke usekela sihlalo wayo ke iSantaco kwiphondo leMpuma Kapa esinaye ke apha eEast London ICC apho ke kubanjwe khona mphulaphuli Provincial Taxi Lekgotla. Besenditshilo ke ndathi ukhona usekela mphathiswa kwezothutho kuzwelonke ebekhe walicela ke noxolo kuba engakwazanga ukuza ngokwakhe umphathiswa ufikile Mbalula. Ukhona ke umama uweziwe Tikana agxothiwe kunye nesigqeba sakhe balapha nazo zonke ke officials ezisuka phaya esebeni nazo stakeholders ezahlukeneyo silapha ke kulo mcimbi walapha kusabreakiwe ke for lunch isidlo sasemini njengoba besenditshilo kuzawuyiwa xa kubuywa kuyiwe kwi-commissions nalapho ke kubuye kuze plenary saphathela ke lo sasazo ngqo ungalibali ukuya phaa kwikhasi kaFacebook lonxibelelwano Keith Ngesi radio naphaya Keith Ngesi digital TV ukanti ke no Facebook wesebe Department of Transport Facebook page ikhona ke nalapho usasazo ngqo kanti ke naku-YouTube sikwakhona so awunasathu mphulaphula ekhaya uba ungakwazi uba inxalenye yalento yenziwayo apho kwenzela uba ngaba ukwezothutho ukwazi uba zithi iinkokheli zakho xa zikuphathela njengoba uMr Yolele sitsho ube ubuzivele nawe ngendlebe zakho ungayindawo ke Keith Ngesi radio Keith Ngesi digital TV izikhululo ezosasazo ezingashishiziyo ezisemgceni ezingaqhawuqhawukiyo bendikhe ndeva ke umphathiswa wesebe MEC Gxebe wezothutho ephondweni ingathi ubekhe kwalontshwa no Friday abakuthiwa no accident Fridays. Ndiyabawela ke phaa ethubeni khe sive into yobana eliphulo luhamba njani na kuba ke siyayazi uba inyanga yezothutho abantu ngoku kuzawufuneka into yobana babe kanti ke ingakumbi sikwi-level 1 we-lockdown izitalato zigcwele abantu bachula unyathela baqhube ngononophelo njalo ngoba kuzawuphinda from apha kubhekwe ke kwi-festive season apho iingozi zendlela zithande ukuba ninzi. Okwangoku ke sakhe sikhangele ke ivenkile ungayindawo ke mphulaphuli masizame ke ukuba silungise imicimbi yekhaya.
We're coming to you live from East London ICC, Eastern Cape, Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality. Today, it is the Provincial Tax called by the Department of Transport here in the Eastern Cape, led by MEC Weziwe Tikana Gotiwe. They will be discussing, or rather they are discussing 4 topical issues around the taxi industry. That is the leadership and unity, regulation of the taxi industry in its own, as well as customer care and professionalization of the taxi industry. We are expecting from the Deputy Minister of Transport, Ms. Dikeledi Magadzi, give a keynote address, and of course they will be breaking away into commissions wherein they will be discussing these topics, and afterwards they will come back to plenary and give feedback to some, be showing a way forward to the taxi industry. This is part of the National Taxi Lekgotla towards the end of this month, as it was launched by the of Transport, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. We will various platforms of choice on Keith Ngesi Radio Facebook page, on Department of Transport Eastern Cape Facebook page, as well as stage elements.